Chapter 2104. The originally peaceful Black Wind Valley was now in chaos. Dazzling magical power light constantly lit up in the valley, and deafening loud noises were heard. All kinds of heavenly fire, astral wind, heavenly thunder and star-divine fire poured down in the valley, creating destructive power that could destroy the world. Countless demon experts and blood gods flew to the sky above the valley, searching for traces of strong enemies. All kinds of screams, angry roars and curses gathered into a sound wave torrent that reverberated in the sky. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were lying in ambush outside the Black Wind Valley, hundreds of miles away. No one could see the situation in the valley clearly, and they did not know what was going on. But looking at the earth-shattering momentum, everyone could guess that the battle in the Black Wind Valley must be very intense. Marshal Ji is indeed a god. He barged into the Black Wind Valley alone and created such a terrifying commotion. He barged into the demon nest alone and assassinated the generals and experts of the demon race amidst more than 400,000 demon race troops. Such strength and courage is rare in the world. Although Marshal Ji is in a dangerous situation, we cannot act rashly before he sends out the signal. As long as there is still movement in the Black Wind Valley, it means that Marshal Ji is still safe. If the movement stops, we must rush in to rescue Marshal Ji no matter what. I have a feeling that Marshal Ji can destroy half of the Black Wind Valley alone. When he sends out the signal, we will lead our troops in to clean up the mess. The four generals were calculating, and their hearts were filled with worry and anxiety. They only hoped that Ji Tianqing would quickly send out the signal. However, the fighting in the Black Wind Valley continued for an entire hour and did not stop. The four generals were burning with anxiety and wanted to rush into the Black Wind Valley several times. But they forced themselves to remain calm and continued to wait. Finally, a bright golden light lit up in the Black Wind Valley. Whoosh! That dazzling golden light pierced through the layers of black fog and demon chi, and rushed into the sky like fireworks before exploding. Swoosh! A golden dragon shadow as huge as a mountain appeared. It stretched out its 5 claws and displayed a divine and majestic aura. Seeing the golden dragon shadow appear, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were overjoyed and hurriedly gave orders. Marshal Ji has finally sent out the signal. Quick! Attack! Everyone, attack! Kill! Kill your way into Black Wind Valley and kill all the remaining demons. Leave none alive. Following the orders of the four generals, the 400,000 soldiers let out an earth-shattering roar as they waved their weapons and rushed toward the Black Wind Valley like a tide. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and Tua Hai were the first to rush into Black Wind Valley. A huge black fog barrier blocked their path. This was the defensive array of Black Wind Valley. The four of them obeyed Ji Tianqing's instructions and hurriedly took out the Heavenly Thunder Talisman and the Holy Light Talisman. They injected their mana into the talisman to activate it and threw it at the black fog barrier. Shwa! The Heavenly Thunder God Talisman burned, erupting with an incomparably violent energy fluctuation. A 5-colored pillar of divine lightning appeared and crashed viciously toward the black mist barrier with the power to destroy everything. Boom! The 10,000-foot-long 5-colored divine lightning struck the black fog barrier with a deafening roar of thunder. A huge hole was blasted in the indestructible black fog barrier on the spot. Dozens of cracks spread out in all directions. Immediately after, the Holy Light Talisman also burned and lit up with a holy white light that covered the sky. The Holy White Light's aura was not violent. It even made everyone feel refreshed, gentle, and warm. However, when the gigantic blazing white light beam hit the black fog barrier, a surprising reaction occurred. Holy white light burst forth, and as long as it came into contact with the black fog and devil chi, it would be purified without a trace. After a few breaths, a 10,000-foot-wide gap appeared on the black fog barrier and was still expanding. The gap was clear and the black fog and demonic chi that filled the valley had all disappeared. The four generals and all the soldiers were pleasantly surprised when they saw this miraculous scene. They revealed expressions of disbelief. Soon, everyone came back to their senses. The four generals took the lead and led the 100,000 soldiers under their command into the Black Wind Valley in a grandiose manner. Everyone originally thought that there would definitely be a fierce battle that would be very tragic. The demon race garrison in Black Wind Valley would definitely form a battle formation and charge forward dauntlessly to stop their invasion. However, when the soldiers charged into Black Wind Valley, they all revealed stunned expressions. The scene in front of them also shocked everyone. They saw that the vast and enormous Black Wind Valley was filled with dilapidated walls, collapsed houses, and palaces. The demon race's barracks were actually destroyed. Fire and smoke rose everywhere, and the ground was covered with cracks and holes. Countless demon race soldiers, either in groups of a few hundred or in groups of a few thousand, ran in panic in Black Wind Valley, constantly roaring in anger, despair, and fear. Seeing this scene, the human soldiers were dumbfounded and only felt that it was inconceivable. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three were also confused. They all sent voice transmissions to inquire about the situation. What's going on? Even if the demon race's barracks were destroyed, they shouldn't be utterly defeated. It's too unbelievable. Is this still the cruel, bloodthirsty, and heartless demon race? Heavens! What did those demon race experience? How could they be destroyed to such a state? Everyone, look at the sky. It seems like Marshal Ji is being besieged. The four generals and many commanders raised their heads to look at the sky. They saw that in the depths of Black Wind Valley, about 100 miles away in the sky, there were more than 10 people fighting. At a glance, they were all demon race generals and blood god sons who were crazily besieging a white figure. Although they were very far away, everyone could recognize that the white figure was Ji Tianqing. His clothes were full of bloodstains. Thus, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three decisively gave orders. All troops, listen to orders. Kill the demon race with all your might. Leave no one alive. Capture Black Wind Valley with the fastest speed and kill all the demon race. After the order was passed down, the 400,000 human soldiers immediately charged towards the demon race army under the leadership of many commanders. As for Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and Tua Hai, they held their weapons and flew into the sky. Swoosh! 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 After 10 breaths, the four generals flew into the sky and rushed into the battlefield. They did their best to rescue Ji Tianqing. They used all their strength to wield their swords and sabers, releasing powerful magic arts to kill the dozen or so Devil Clan experts. However, those demon race generals and blood god sons were abnormally powerful. They fought for a long time and were not defeated. In the process, Ji Tianqing used thunderous means to kill 7 demon race generals and blood god sons. There were only 5 demon race experts left in the sky. They were all terrified and turned to flee in panic. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3 were greatly relieved. Only then did they rush to Ji Tianqing's side. Chapter 2105. Previously, the 4 generals had seen Ji Tianqing being surrounded by many demons and covered in blood. They had thought that he was heavily injured and had been very worried. Only now did they know that he was not injured and that his body was stained with the blood of demons. The 4 generals were greatly relieved after the false alarm. At the same time, they felt ashamed and self-deprecating. I saw Marshal Ji kill more than 300,000 demons with my own eyes. I've already seen his unparalleled power. Why am I still so worried today? Alas, our knowledge is still too shallow. It's our first time following Marshal Ji on an expedition, yet we're so nervous. In the eyes of all the soldiers, Marshal Ji is creating a miracle by leading troops to attack Black Wind Valley and sneaking in alone to assassinate people. But to Marshal Ji, this is all very common. Otherwise, how could he be so calm and collected? Just as the 4 generals were thinking, Ji Tianqing killed another 5 fleeing demon generals. Whoosh! He flew back to the 4 generals and asked with a dignified expression, "The battlefield is dangerous and you can lose your lives at any time. Why are you in a daze? Do you want to die?" Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others immediately came back to their senses and hurriedly bowed to apologize and explain. "Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We have failed in our duty. We have witnessed Marshal Ji's power once again and were impressed by Marshal Ji's style. We were deeply shocked and lost our composure on the battlefield. Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We will immediately lead troops to encircle and eliminate the remaining demons." Ji Tianqing glanced at the 4 and said expressionlessly, "Stop flattering me. Ben Shuai doesn't buy it. Ben Shuai has already killed more than 100,000 soldiers in Black Wind Valley. Ben Shuai has also destroyed more than half of the defensive structures and formations. Ben Shuai has killed almost all the demon generals and blood gods above the Tribulation Realm. The remaining 300,000 demons are like headless flies. They are utterly defeated. The 4 of you are responsible for encircling and eliminating the remaining demons. You must end the battle in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, our soldiers will be infected by the demon qi and poisonous miasma if they stay for too long." Black Wind Valley was filled with devil qi and poisonous fog. Only experts above the Tribulation Realm could remain unaffected. If ordinary human soldiers were to stay in the poisonous fog and devil qi for a long time, their bodies would definitely rot and turn into blood, and they would die in pain. What was worse was that the disease was contagious. Once it spread in the barracks, it would cause a terrifying disaster. It was precisely because of this that Black Wind Valley could become a powerful defensive line for the demon army. When Ji Tianqing proposed to attack Black Wind Valley, the generals were hesitant and fearful. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3 hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed. Soon after, the 4 of them split up and commanded their soldiers to quickly encircle and annihilate the remaining demons. Ji Tianqing stood high up in the sky, surrounded by the poisonous fog and devil qi, and coldly stared at the valley. His divine sense spread out, enveloping a radius of 1,000 miles, monitoring every movement in the valley. At the same time, he crossed his hands and waved them, forming a mysterious incantation. He constantly shot out rays of sacred white light, scattering them in Black Wind Valley. The sacred white light scattered in the sky, and quickly expelled the poisonous fog and devil qi in the surroundings. In this way, the pressure on the human soldiers was greatly reduced. As time passed, the battle cries in Black Wind Valley gradually weakened, and the remaining demons became fewer and fewer. Ji Tianqing looked at the situation in the valley, and estimated that the battle would end in another hour. But at this moment, his divine sense suddenly detected a trace of a strange aura. In the depths of the valley, 400 miles away from him, there was a weak aura of magic power. It was taking advantage of the chaos to escape underground, fleeing into the distance. Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows, and flew away as fast as the aurora. He crossed the sky 15 miles with each step, and after 30 breaths, he arrived in the depths of the valley. The barracks in this area had long been reduced to ruins. Fires were burning everywhere, and black smoke billowed out. There were still 20 to 30,000 demons who were resisting stubbornly, resisting the encirclement of 80,000 human soldiers. The scene was very chaotic. Ji Tianqing ignored the 2 armies that were fighting. His divine sense probed into the depths of the ground, and quickly captured that aura. It was a black sword shadow, which was rapidly traveling underground, and was about to escape the range of Black Wind Valley. "Want to escape?" Ji Tianqing murmured indifferently. His body turned into a golden light, and he immediately chased after it. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, he burrowed into the ground, and chased after it with lightning speed. He had already mastered the 5 elements, and used the celestial chaos secret technique to merge with heaven and earth. Even if he was traveling underground with layers of rocks, it was as if he was walking on flat ground. His speed was unbelievably fast. In just 10 breaths, he had traveled 300 miles, and caught up with the Black Sword Shadow. The Black Sword Shadow also sensed his existence, and rushed out of the ground in a panic, and flew into the sky. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing also rushed out of the ground, and flew into the sky. One man, one sword, flew into the dusky sky at the same time, and appeared in the sky above the grey wasteland. This was the north of Black Wind Valley, and it was a few hundred miles away from Black Wind Valley. The Black Sword Shadow was very frightened, and it actually ignited with blazing white flames, and its speed increased by more than 3 times. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was faster than it. Heaven capturing Dragon Claw. He let out a low roar, and with a wave of his hand, a huge golden dragon claw appeared, and grabbed the Black Sword Shadow. The Black Sword Shadow struggled with all its might, but it could not break free from the dragon claw's shackles, and was immediately caught by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing took a closer look, and only then did he realize that the Black Sword Shadow was a half-meter long black short sword. The short sword was a tribulation-grade magic treasure, and its shape was simple and strange, with a few array talismans carved on its surface. It was obvious that this was not a weapon of the demon race, but a magic treasure refined by humans. Most of the arrays on this sword focus on speed, and it's mainly used for flying. Ji Tianqing saw through the clues, and could not help but frown. He knew very well that the short sword could not fly on its own, and someone must be hiding in the sword to control it. Therefore, he released a violent magic power, and brutally broke the defensive array of the short sword. Then, his divine sense forced its way into the space inside the short sword, knocked out the person inside, and grabbed him out. Swoosh! A human male wearing a long black robe and a large cloak appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. This person was covered from head to toe, and his aura was very gloomy and cold. If one did not use their divine sense to check, no one would think that he was a human. Ji Tianqing held the short sword, lifted the large cloak, and saw an old, withered face. This human elder's body was withered, and his face was ugly, and his aura was as gloomy as a venomous snake's. Ji Tianqing sized him up, and released a wave of divine sense to wake him up. The old man gradually regained consciousness, and with a swoosh, he opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing with a malicious gaze, but he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Ji Tianqing stared at him with a sharp gaze, and said in a playful tone, "As a human martial monarch, you are on the same side as the demon race, and after being captured by me, you can still be so calm." Chapter 2106. The black-robed old man's reaction was originally very calm and indifferent. But when he heard Ji Tianqing's words, the corner of his eyes twitched, and a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. Obviously, Ji Tianqing relied on his powerful observation skills to determine so much information in an instant, which shocked him. The black-robed old man's change in expression naturally did not escape Ji Tianqing's eyes. He immediately revealed a playful sneer and asked again, "It seems that I guessed right. You do have a mission. With your strength at the 5th level of the tribulation passing realm, you are a famous martial lord expert in the 3 divine kingdoms. Even in the demon army, you can be compared to the demon generals. However, I have never seen you make a move. You only wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. This means that you are not working for the demon race, and there are other forces behind you." The black-robed old man remained silent. He even closed his eyes and tried his best to maintain the calmness of his divine soul, not allowing Ji Tianqing to pry into the truth. Ji Tianqing carefully observed him and the short sword. After a while, he continued, "You did not speak because you did not want to expose your accent. You dressed as a demon because you did not want to expose the flaws of your clothing style, so that I could not find out your origin. But don't forget that the humans of the three divine kingdoms have slight differences in body shape, facial features, hair, and bones. If I'm not wrong, you must be from the heaven and divine kingdom. His tone was cold and firm, containing strong confidence. The black-robed old man, who had been as calm as ice, suddenly trembled when he heard his last sentence. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing with a malicious gaze. He grinned and sneered, ha ha ha. As expected of the number one genius of the Luoshui divine kingdom, the greatest threat to the demon race. Ji Tianqing, your confidence and arrogance are truly unimaginable. But unfortunately, you guessed wrong this time. The black-robed old man's voice was dry and hoarse, like two pieces of old bark rubbing against each other. It was very unpleasant to hear. At the same time, his accent clearly carried the flavor of the Luoshui divine kingdom, as if he was from an empire on the eastern coast. You're finally willing to speak. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, since you know who I am, you should know my methods. If he told the truth, he would suffer less physical pain. Of course, don't tell me you're from the Luoshui divine nation. This little trick is useless against me. The black-robed elder remained calm and sneered disdainfully, people who walk in the shadows only believe in darkness and sharp blades. They disdain to belong to any divine kingdom. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and looked at him deeply. He then lowered his head to look at the black dagger in his hand. Darkness and blades. He vaguely guessed that there was something strange about this short sword. However, the short sword had the black-robed old man's soul imprint, and only the black-robed old man could control the short sword. Or, Ji Tianqing could kill the black-robed old man and wait for the soul imprint to dissipate before he could use this short sword. Ji Tianqing cast a spell with his left hand and was about to forcefully erase the soul imprint. The black-robed old man suddenly sneered, if you forcefully erase the soul imprint, my soul will be damaged and I will lose my memory and become an idiot. At that time, you'll never know my identity or my secret. Anyway, I'm already in your hands and my life and death are in your hands. Why don't we make a deal? Spare my life and let me go. I'll tell you my origin and secrets. Ji Tianqing immediately stopped and looked coldly at the black-robed old man. This is your only chance. After saying that, he handed the short sword to the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man took the short sword and said, as expected of Ji Tianqing. You're wise and courageous. Unfortunately, you're too confident. Ha ha ha. When he looked up and laughed crazily, Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong and immediately reached out to grab the short sword. However, it was too late. The mysterious black short sword had been detonated by the black-robed old man. Boom! With a deafening sound, the black dagger instantly shattered into pieces that filled the sky, bursting into a huge ball of black flames. The black flame had a strange attribute. It was an extremely rare dark flame. The pitch-black flames enveloped Ji Tianqing, and the violent impact sent him flying backwards on the spot. However, he was already prepared and used his powerful magic power to protect his body. He was not injured by the impact. Swoosh! He flew more than 10 miles before stopping in the sky. When the dark flame dissipated, he quickly flew back to his previous position. He saw that the black short sword had been shattered into countless pieces and scattered on the scorched earth. The black-robed old man was lying in a deep pit more than 10 miles away. Only half of his bloody body was left and his body was covered with a layer of dust. He lay motionless in the pit. His body was badly mutilated and he was no longer breathing. Ji Tianqing quickly flew to his side and used his divine sense to check. He found that the old man's soul had been shattered. The explosion of the short sword only injured his physical body. The shattering of his soul was because he had chosen to commit suicide. Ji Tianqing frowned and his face became as cold as ice. Damn it! How could there be such a crazy person who did not care about his life? This old man was a death warrior. He would rather die than reveal his identity. He even wanted to destroy the secret. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of something. That's right. That short sword and the old man's soul were fused together. It was his natal magic weapon. Not only did he use the short sword to escape, there must be a secret in it. The short sword was destroyed by the explosion. However, the things in the space of the sword might not be completely destroyed. Therefore, Ji Tianqing quickly released his divine sense to cover the wasteland within 100 miles and carefully searched the ruins. After a few minutes, he found more than 10 pieces of fragments. These fragments were of different sizes. The big ones were the size of a fingernail and the small ones were only the size of a sesame seed. After careful inspection, Ji Tianqing found that 2 of them were fragments of the short sword and a few fragments of magic weapons. They were all useless. Only 2 fragments were valuable and attracted his attention. One of the dark brown metal fragments was the size of a fingernail. There were patterns engraved on the front and 2 incomplete seal characters on the north side. Ji Tianqing studied it for a while and recognized that it was the words shadow and blade. Shadow blade? Could it be the name of a force? This metal fragment is from the identity token. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. He was not sure and checked the other fragment. This fragment was only the size of a sesame seed. It was a fragment of a jade slip used to transmit and record information. Under normal circumstances, after the jade slip is shattered, the information recorded in it will dissipate quickly. It will not dissipate immediately. There will be a process and a short period of time. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. He quickly used his divine sense to explore the jade slip fragment. After a while, he read a message from the fragment. The plan has failed. The army has no leader. We must do something else. Chapter 2107. Ji Tianqing pondered with an indifferent expression. A golden flame surged out of his palm and burned the 2 fragments to ashes. He waved his hand, got up, and stepped into the sky, flying towards Black Wind Valley. Although there was only half a sentence left in the jade scroll, there was no beginning or end. But he combined all the information and gradually sorted out the situation. Originally, I thought that the demon army was so eager to attack the Luoshui divine kingdom because of the return of the ancestor demon god. It needs slaughter and war to recover its strength as soon as possible. Now it seems that things are more complicated than I thought. There are actually human forces involved in this war and colluding with the demons. Those who can work with Dark North Mountain are either super martial forces like the Broken Sky Alliance or the 3 divine kingdoms. As for Ingren, I have never heard of this name. Unless he has the support of a super force behind him, then he has the right to add fuel to the fire. Although the appearance of the black-robed elder was just a small interlude. It did not have any impact on the Battle of Black Wind Valley. But through this, Ji Tianqing realized the complexity of the situation and buried a thorn in his heart. I have to be more careful in the future. Even if I expel the demon army, I can't let my guard down. Sooner or later, I will find out the force behind Ingren and see who is colluding with the demons. After a while, Ji Tianqing returned to Black Wind Valley. The battle was coming to an end. Only a few tens of thousands of demon soldiers were still stubbornly resisting, but they were quickly wiped out by the human army. The 4 generals ordered the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. They rushed to Ji Tianqing's side and excitedly reported the results of the battle. Reporting to General Ji, our army has achieved a complete victory in this battle. General Ji, we lost 60,000 soldiers, but killed more than 340,000 enemies and completely occupied Black Wind Valley. Ji Tianqing frowned and said calmly, wrong. We killed 450,000 enemies and completely wiped out the demons. Ah. Ban Yunshan was stunned and said with a puzzled face, General Ji, that's not right. We only killed 340,000 demons, and you personally killed 110,000 demons. This is your military merit, we do not dare to claim it. Wei Yu and Yi Xianqing hurriedly nodded in agreement. That's right. Commander Ji, you have the greatest merit. We accept this wholeheartedly. We will definitely report this to Commander Xia and the Saint Emperor. If Marshal Ji had not killed his way into the Black Wind Valley alone, how could we have achieved victory today? To tell you the truth, we've all picked up the merit with you. We're already ashamed to accept it, so how could we dare to think more? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and chuckled. Don't talk nonsense. Does Benshui still need that bit of merit? The four of you are willing to risk your lives and follow Benshui to attack Black Wind Valley. This is an additional reward for you. Don't forget that Benshui said that the rewards will be doubled before we set off. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were pleasantly surprised, but they were also ashamed and uneasy. Many thanks for Marshal Ji's grace, but this general's heart is uneasy. Marshal Ji, from now on, we will follow your lead. We are willing to go through fire and water for you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a dignified tone, don't decline anymore. This matter is settled. Return to the Celestial Overlook Pass. With that, he took the lead and stepped into the sky. His clothes fluttered as he flew towards the south. The four generals arranged the aftermath and quickly followed him back to the Celestial Overlook Pass. After an hour, the news of the victory in Black Wind Valley spread throughout the Celestial Overlook Pass. Not only Xia Wudao and the other 20 generals were shocked, but they also found it unbelievable. Even the million soldiers in the pass were shocked to the extreme. They found it hard to believe. When the four generals led the army back, the million soldiers had no choice but to accept this reality. In an instant, the entire Celestial Overlook Pass was in an uproar. Everyone was immersed in shock and surprise as they discussed this matter excitedly. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and the rest, as well as the 300,000 soldiers who returned in triumph, did not hide the details of the battle. Everyone was filled with pride as they recounted the events of the battle to others. They praised Ji Tianqing as if he was a god who had descended from the heavens and was extremely powerful. Ji Tianqing's fame and achievements once again shocked the entire Celestial Overlook Pass. More than 2 million soldiers were filled with admiration and respect for him. One day later, Marshal Xia Wudao gathered all the generals and awarded them in front of the public square. All the soldiers who participated in the battle were rewarded with double the military merits. They were also praised by Xia Wudao in front of everyone. Not only did these people receive military honors, but they also received money. As such, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the focus of the entire scene. They were envied by the 2 million soldiers. After the award ceremony ended, Xia Wudao was busy with the aftermath of the battle. Of the soldiers who participated in the war, those who should be promoted were promoted, those who should be promoted were promoted, and those who should be compensated were compensated. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Xia Wudao might not have much ability in the battle, but he was a rare expert in managing the overall situation and arranging the rear affairs. Ji Tianqing did not have the time to care about these matters. He left them all to Xia Wudao. He stayed in his residence to rest. At the same time, he studied the situation of the battle and the defensive arrangements and thought about his next move. Unknowingly, another day had passed. Xia Wudao had finished dealing with the rewards and compensation for the soldiers who participated in the battle. The bustling Celestial Overlook Pass gradually calmed down. However, at this moment, an exciting news came from the marshal's palace. It ignited everyone's enthusiasm once again. Deputy Marshal Ji Tianqing announced that they would set off again in 2 days. This time, he would lead 500,000 soldiers. As for which stronghold or barracks they would attack, it was still a secret. When the million soldiers heard the news, they were so excited that they could not sleep. Their blood was burning. Countless soldiers rushed to the barracks of the commanders, requesting to participate in the battle and follow Ji Tianqing. The commanders were under pressure and could only rush to the general's residence overnight to ask for the soldiers' orders. However, when the commanders arrived at the general's residence, they found that the generals were long gone. It turned out that when the 20 over-generals heard the news, they all put down their work and rushed to the marshal's palace. In the marshal's palace, Ji Tianqing's bedroom was brightly lit. He sat in the study, brewing a cup of hot tea. He held a military book and read it quietly. Wei Yu stood by his side like a guard. His expression was respectful and strict. Outside the door of the sleeping chamber, more than 20 armored generals were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing the matter of the expedition. They wanted to see Ji Tianqing and request to join the battle. However, the guards at the door stopped everyone and did not allow anyone to enter. The generals were noisy and discussed for a long time. However, Ji Tianqing did not appear. Half an hour later, in the middle of the night, only one person came to the gate. Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was General Wei Yu. Wei Yu looked at the anxious generals and said expressionlessly, "Marshal Ji is thinking about important military matters. Generals, please be quiet and do not make any noise." Chapter 2108. More than 20 generals had rushed over excitedly to see Ji Tianqing, but they were all blocked outside the door. After waiting for half an hour, he was already impatient and unable to wait any longer. Now that Wei Yu had finally appeared, he had reprimanded everyone and even wanted them to line up. The expressions of the generals immediately changed. They were rather dissatisfied and began to discuss secretly. "Damn it! Wei Yu is a general like us. Now that he has become Marshal Ji's confidant, he dares to reprimand us. Sigh. Who asked us to ask for help? Even if Marshal Ji and Wei Yu give us a hard time, we have to endure it. Previously, when Marshal Ji wanted to attack Black Wind Valley, we all dissuaded and opposed it. Only Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the other two followed Marshal Ji to battle. If it was anyone else, they would treat Wei Yu as a trusted aide and would inevitably embarrass us." A general with a full beard said angrily, "Isn't this an obvious humiliation to us? I can't take this lying down. At most, I'll just return to the barracks and stay." Another middle-aged general quickly nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "Yes, yes, yes. How can you take this lying down? Quickly return to the barracks and rest." "Bah!" The bearded general glared at him and said, "Do you think I'm stupid? If I return to the barracks to rest, you will have the chance to follow Marshal Ji to battle. As long as you can follow Marshal Ji to battle, it's like picking up military merits with your eyes closed. Furthermore, it's double the reward. Only a fool wouldn't go. If Marshal Ji wants to humiliate me, then humiliate me with all your might. As long as I can participate in the battle, even if Marshal Ji slaps me in public, I'm willing." The bearded general's words were unpleasant, but none of the generals present laughed at him. It was because everyone had the same thoughts and ideas. As long as they could follow Ji Tianqing to battle, even if they had to kneel in public, it was fine. Kneeling to a godly person like Ji Tianqing was just a form of worship. It was not shameful. If they could follow him to battle, they would definitely have outstanding military merits. Who wouldn't be tempted by the rewards? Although the generals had some complaints and discussed secretly, they all waited patiently. However, they were all patient. They quietly lined up in a long line and waited patiently. When Wei Yu saw that everyone had lined up, he revealed a playful smile and turned to enter the sleeping chamber. A moment later, he returned to the study and stood beside Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing asked without raising his head, "Ben Shuai only said that he would only bring along those who are sincere. You actually humiliated them like this. Aren't you afraid of arousing public anger?" Wei Yu smiled and cupped his hands. "General Ji, it is not that I acted on my own, but this is the only way to verify who is more sincere. Furthermore, this general is speaking up for you. Previously, when you wanted to lead the army into battle, they all made all sorts of excuses and prevaricated, as if they were afraid of death. After the great victory in the Black Wind Valley, now that you want to go to war, they are all licking their faces and asking to fight. This is really despicable. You are magnanimous and did not argue with them. However, this general feels that it's not worth it for you. That's why I purposely left them hanging so that they can reflect on themselves. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, since you've already done so, let's do as you say. Wei Yu cupped his hands and bowed before taking his leave. Ji Tianqing read a book for half the night before returning to his room to meditate and cultivate. For the next 2 days, he did not show his face. He had been cultivating. As for the 20 or so generals, they had been waiting in line outside the gate. On the first day, the generals were resentful but could still wait patiently. However, on the second day, the news spread throughout the camp, causing the million soldiers to discuss animatedly. The generals felt that they had become a laughingstock and could not suppress their resentment and anger. One after another, some of them left. There were still a few generals who were indignant. They turned and ran to Xia Wudao to complain. There was no need to doubt the result. These generals did not please either side and were reprimanded by Xia Wudao. On the morning of the third day, it was time for Ji Tianqing to go to war. At this time, the 20 or so generals had basically all left. Only the last general was still standing outside the gate, waiting bitterly. He stood there for 2 days and 2 nights without moving a single step. Moreover, his eyes were closed and his expression was calm. No matter how angry the other generals were and how the soldiers in the camp mocked him behind his back, he turned a deaf ear. Finally, Ji Tianqing appeared when the first ray of light shone in the morning. He stepped out of the sleeping quarters with a refreshed expression and came to the gate. Looking at the figure at the gate, he said in a playful tone, Ben Shuai thought that the generals could not bear the humiliation and had all left in anger. I did not expect that there would be a thick-skinned one who stayed. You, what is your name? The middle-aged general in blue armor saluted with a solemn expression and said calmly, this general, Xingpingji, greets Marshal Ji. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Ben Shuai said that you were thick-skinned, but you are still able to take it with equanimity. It is rare to see such indifference. I think you must be someone with a story, but Ben Shuai is not interested in your story. Go gather the troops under your command and gather them outside the pass. Get ready to set out. Xingpingji originally thought that Ji Tianqing would ask about his experience, but he did not expect that Ji Tianqing was not interested at all. Marshal Ji is indeed not an ordinary person. This general is impressed. This general will take his leave. After he bowed, he left in satisfaction and went to prepare the army for war. After he left, Wei Yu came to Ji Tianqing's side and said in a low voice, Marshal Ji, this General Xingpingji has never been very sociable. He is very dull and reserved. Among all the generals, he is the most inconspicuous. Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and interrupted, Ben Shuai is only a passerby. He is only responsible for leading you to victory and driving away the demon army. As for the stories and experiences of the soldiers, Ben Shuai is not interested. In half a month, Ben Shuai will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass and head to the Qiyang Empire. Wei Yu was startled and showed a look of deep regret. But he felt relieved after thinking for a while. He quickly adjusted his mentality and prepared the troops for war. Half an hour later, the 500,000 soldiers gathered outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and set off valiantly. The 5 generals leading the troops were Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tua Hai, and Xingpingji, who had just joined. This time, Ji Tianqing's target was the west camp of the demon army. The west camp was at the edge of the wilderness and was thousands of miles away from the Celestial Overlook Pass. There were millions of soldiers stationed there and the defense was extremely tight. After the soldiers set off, they found out that their target was actually the West Camp. They were all shocked and worried. Using 500,000 soldiers to attack the millions of heavily guarded soldiers was undoubtedly like throwing an egg against a rock and seeking their own death. Fortunately, the leader was Ji Tianqing, the legendary killing god. If Xia Wudao was the leader, the soldiers would have been in an uproar and even collapsed and disbanded. This mission was unusual. Ji Tianqing also changed his strategy. He used the world and the sword of burial of heaven to bring 5 generals and more than 20 commanders to infiltrate the west camp of the demon army. Chapter 2109. This was an unprecedented and almost suicidal war. An army of 500,000 lay in ambush outside the western camp, waiting for Ji Tianqing's order to attack. Ji Tianqing used the sword of burial of heaven to bring 5 generals and 20-some commanders into the western camp. This camp was surrounded by mountains, and 300 li to the east was a vast plain. An army of more than 1 million demons occupied a valley of 300 li in circumference. At a glance, one could see that the valley was densely packed with black stone houses and palaces. Countless minarets and watchtowers stood in the military camp. There were also many scouts in blood-red armor patrolling in the sky, monitoring the movements in the surroundings. The skull and blood banner in the camp fluttered in the wind, and the air was filled with thick demonic mist and black qi. A massive fortress of 300 li in circumference enveloped the entire valley, operating day and night. Ji Tianqing used a secret technique to pass through the black fortress and enter the camp. He was in no hurry to assassinate the demon generals. First, he hid in the shadows and observed the defensive array. He quickly thought of a way to break it and found several weak points. Then, he ordered the 5 generals in the sword world to prepare their talismans. In a little while, when he wreaked havoc in the camp, the 5 generals would use this chance to destroy the defensive array. In addition, the 20-some commanders would each have their own mission, to destroy the defensive fortifications and arrays in the camp. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing circled around the camp and made proper arrangements for the 5 generals and the 20 or so commanders. Everyone used invisibility talismans to hide their tracks and qi, hiding in different locations and nodes, waiting for the operation to begin. Ji Tianqing left alone, making his way to the center of the camp, preparing to assassinate the demon generals and experts. But just as he made his way to the center of the camp and prepared to infiltrate a massive palace, a horn sounded. At this moment, the sound of a horn came from the camp. A scout had sent out a warning signal. The entire demon camp was alarmed. Countless armored and sword-wielding scouts flew into the air, seething with killing intent, and began to search the area. On the ground, one demon army after another rapidly gathered and set off. In a short span of 100 breaths, 400,000 demons had split into 4 armies and arrived at the edges of the camp. They had all activated their defensive fortifications and formations, and were in a defensive posture, waiting for the enemy to come. The entire demon camp immediately entered a state of combat readiness, like a fully drawn bow, ready to explode with astounding power at any moment. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately understood. The soldiers lying in ambush around the camp must have been discovered by the demon scouts, causing the demon army to be on guard. Damn it! The entire camp is on alert. Even if I create chaos, the army may not be able to charge in. Ji Tianqing murmured with a solemn expression. Worry flashed across his eyes. At the same time, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others who were hiding in the surroundings of the camp and waiting for an opportunity to destroy the grand formation were burning with anxiety and worry to the extreme. The situation was extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, the 500,000-strong army led by Ji Tianqing would be buried here. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then resolutely decided to carry out the original plan. He remained invisible and quietly entered the palace, searching for traces of the demon generals. In his opinion, the demon generals would definitely hold an emergency meeting when they learned that the human army outside the camp had been discovered. The facts proved that he had guessed correctly. When he sneaked into the second floor of the palace, he detected the auras of more than a dozen experts in a heavily guarded secret room. The secret room had a defensive array, and there were more than 20 elite guards around it. Ji Tianqing quietly crept to the door of the secret room to investigate the situation inside. He saw 16 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon experts sitting around a long stone table. These were all demon generals. Most of them wore battle armor, and a few wore black robes. The leader was a middle-aged demon man who was as strong as an iron tower and looked like an old bear. This person's strength had reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. He was Demon Lord Warsoul, one of the top 10 of the 36 demon lords. At the same time, he was also the main general of the West Camp. The strength of the other 15 demon generals was between the 2nd and 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. Just as Ji Tianqing expected, more than a dozen demon generals had secretly gathered to discuss countermeasures. Just now, the scouts reported that the human army has been discovered outside the camp. There are at least 400,000 of them. Are the humans crazy? How dare they attack us with only 400,000 soldiers? It must be Ji Tianqing. Only a lunatic would dare to do such a crazy thing. He is digging his own grave. Let's defend with all our strength. I want to see how the 400,000 human army can kill their way into the camp. Everyone, don't forget Ji Tianqing's usual tricks. He will definitely sneak into the camp first to create a disaster and assassinate us and the Blood God. Previously, when he saved the White Frost Empire, he did this and won all the battles without a single defeat. It is said that the Azura Demon Saint and Xuepao Patriarch were defeated by Ji Tianqing. His strength has already reached the Saint Realm. Even if we join forces, we can't defeat him. Humph. We are no match for him, but does he dare to break into the camp alone and face millions of soldiers? More than a dozen demon generals argued endlessly. Some advocated to defend with all their strength, while others suggested to ambush Ji Tianqing together. In a short time, they could not reach a consensus. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing quietly released the power of his divine soul. It turned into more than 20 invisible arrows and attacked the guards around the secret chamber. Swish! Swish! In the next moment, more than 20 demon guards were all hit by the arrows. Their divine souls were shattered on the spot, and they died instantly. Their corpses were cut off and slowly fell to the ground, making slight bumping sounds. Even so, some of the demon generals in the secret chamber were alarmed. One of the demon generals suddenly stood up and shouted in a low voice, "Something is happening." More than a dozen demon generals quieted down and released their divine senses to check the situation outside the secret chamber. Seeing that more than 20 guards were dead, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they all let out exclamations and shouts. Enemy attack! It's Ji Tianqing. It must be him. Don't panic, everyone. Let's join forces to deal with him. We can definitely hold him back. In a moment, more than a dozen demon generals took out their weapons and magic treasures. They were on high alert and vigilant. Ji Tianqing sneered and said in a low voice, "All of you are here. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. Now, I will send all of you to hell." As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the door of the secret chamber. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Following Ji Tianqing's cold shout, a dazzling golden light lit up behind him, and a soaring golden dragon's shadow appeared. Roar! The 5-clawed golden dragon let out a high-pitched dragon roar. The sword of burial of heaven also slashed out a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long and slashed at the black secret chamber. Chapter 21:10. A thunderous sound exploded in the depths of the palace. At that moment, the defensive array of the secret room was destroyed by the giant golden sword. The sturdy black stone secret room was also split in half by the giant sword, and shattered stones flew everywhere. A deafening sound spread throughout the entire devil race's camp. The destructive shockwave instantly destroyed the entire palace, causing it to collapse into ruins. The entire camp began to tremble, and cracks began to appear on the ground. In the dust, Ji Tianqing, wrapped in golden light, soared into the sky. Celestial dragon tyrant body. He roared, and a sacred golden light surged out of his body. His body immediately became a dozen times larger. In a flash, he became a 30-meter-tall golden-armored giant, exuding a violent and domineering aura. The golden armor on the surface of his body was made up of hundreds of dragon scales. It looked very mighty and shocking. At the same time, his defense, strength, and speed had increased by more than 5 times. He stood proudly above the ruins, holding the giant burial of heaven sword in his right hand. He pointed it at the ground and let out an earth-shaking roar. Today, I, Ji Tianqing, will kill 1,000,000 demons and teach North Underworld Mountain an unforgettable lesson. His voice was like rolling thunder, reverberating in the sky above the west camp, shaking the eardrums of every demon. Countless people looked up at the sky, glaring at him, and roaring angrily. In the ruins under Ji Tianqing's feet, a scarlet demon light lit up again, and there was a cracking sound. Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals pushed aside the rubble in a sorry state and staggered out. The sword just now had killed several demon generals on the spot. But Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals were only seriously injured, and did not die on the spot. The 7 of them were covered in blood, and they were severely injured. After rushing out of the ruins, they did not dare to attack Ji Tianqing at all, and immediately scattered and fled. But Ji Tianqing's left palm struck out 5-colored divine lightning, and his right hand swung the sword 49 times. Whoosh! 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 49 silver sword lights blossomed like lotuses and struck the 6 demon generals. The 6 demon generals were killed on the spot by the sword light. Their corpses turned into minced meat and blood, and their divine souls were also shattered. At the same time, the 5-colored divine lightning struck Demon Monarch Warsoul, turning him into a charred corpse. His corpse fell from the sky and smashed into a palace, shattering into a pile of debris. Demon Monarch Warsoul was also killed by the 5-colored divine lightning. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked around. He saw that the sky was filled with the figures of the devil race experts, who were rushing over to kill him like a tide. In the black fog not far away, there were a few invisible blood gods illusions sneaking over, preparing to launch a sneak attack. On the ground, tens of thousands of demon soldiers had gathered into 9 square formations. They were controlling the demon Dao formations and releasing destructive attacks. In an instant, the sky was filled with layers of demonic shadows and murderous auras. Countless rays of bloody light, demonic light, and magical light flooded over like a flood. Ji Tianqing fell into a tight encirclement and was about to be drowned out by the tens of thousands of devil soldiers. However, he did not panic in the face of danger. His expression did not change. He ignored all the attacks. His left hand formed a seal and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven, using his trump card. Unstoppable heavenly lightning. Under his control, all the lightning energy within a radius of 20,000 miles was gathered together. Terrifying heavenly lightning also fell from the 9 heavens. Hundreds of heavenly thunder light pillars struck down from the sky. The dazzling lightning illuminated the entire camp. Boom! 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 The lightning poured down from the sky, covering a radius of 50 miles and exploding with deafening sounds. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the area within 50 miles became a sea of lightning. The magical attacks of tens of thousands of devil soldiers were all shattered by the lightning. Countless houses and buildings were blasted into smithereens, and the ground was scorched. Batch after batch of devil soldiers were struck into charcoal and fell to the ground. It was as if doomsday had arrived, and the world was about to be destroyed. Except for Ji Tianqing, no one could withstand such a terrifying heavenly lightning bombardment. After a full 10 breaths, the earth-shattering sounds gradually dissipated. The lightning and smoke that pervaded the camp also gradually disappeared. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared in the sky once again. He was 10 feet tall, shining with golden light, and exuding a mighty and sacred aura. The camp under his feet had become scorched earth, and all that could be seen were ruins. The dark and smoking ground was covered with deep pits and cracks, and there were broken walls and black ashes everywhere. Not only were the tens of thousands of devil soldiers that besieged him killed, but even the devil soldiers that were closer to him were also killed. There were also tens of thousands of devil soldiers who were affected by the power of the heavenly lightning bombardment. It was a scene of heavy casualties. For a moment, the entire devil camp was silent. Hundreds of thousands of people were horrified. They stared at the sky, dumbfounded, and stared at Ji Tianqing. Their purple and blood-red eyes were filled with unparalleled terror and fear. Such an unkillable guy could trigger the power of the heavenly lightning. He was simply a killing machine on the battlefield, an absolute killing god. Every devil felt a strong sense of powerlessness from the bottom of their hearts. They could do nothing to Ji Tianqing, but Ji Tianqing could slaughter them wantonly. This was simply too sullen, making people vomit blood in anger. After a moment of silence, the devil soldiers all around all let out roars of grief and indignation, cursing wildly. There were even many experts and warriors who were not afraid of death, charging over dauntlessly. Like a black wave, they drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing's left hand brandished a fist, and his right hand brandished a sword, fighting fiercely in the crowd. Bam bam bam. Each fist light and palm shadow would smash a pile of devils into pieces, splattering minced meat and blood all over the sky. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The burial of heaven sword scattered sword light all over the sky. Sometimes it formed a fierce sword array, sometimes it condensed into brilliant starlight, and sometimes it turned into an ancient divine beast, bursting with terrifying power. But any devil that was swept by the sword light could not escape the fate of being smashed to pieces. Tens of thousands of devil experts besieged Ji Tianqing, but no one could block one of his moves. And the attacks released by the devil experts were very difficult to hit Ji Tianqing. He basically dodged all of them. Even if there were some magical attacks that did hit him, it was like scratching an itch, not causing him any injury. Ji Tianqing fought fiercely in the sky, like a fierce tiger in a flock of sheep, sweeping everything in his path, unparalleled in his slaughter. In a short quarter of an hour, he actually killed nearly 200,000 devils. Of the remaining 700,000 devils, 400,000 were guarding the 4 directions of the camp. The other 300,000 were thinking of ways to deal with Ji Tianqing, even forming battle formations to besiege him. But these were all useless. Chapter 21:11. Although Ji Tianqing wasn't a martial saint, he had defeated 95% of the martial saint experts. Although he still couldn't defeat an 8th stage realm martial saint and above. But in terms of massacring 1,000,000 demons, even a 9th stage realm martial saint couldn't be compared to him. Because he had grasped an ultimate skill which didn't belong to this realm and didn't belong to this world. Right from the start, this 1 against 1,000,000 war was a one-sided massacre. What was unbelievable and laughable was that it was Ji Tianqing who massacred 1,000,000 demons alone. He rampaged through the demons' campsite and massacred wantonly, as though he was a steel giant dealing with ants all over the ground. Every move he made and every move he casually executed was enough to crush numerous ants to death. The ants on the ground tried their best but they weren't able to hurt him at all. Unknowingly, 1 hour had passed. The west campsite had sunk into complete chaos. The barracks, palaces and fortifications within a radius of 300 miles had all been destroyed by Ji Tianqing. This entire region had turned into ruins and there wasn't a single intact building. What entered his eyes was scorched earth and ruins, deep pits and ravines. At least 400,000 demon soldiers had died under his sword, turning into dregs and dust. He had long been soaked in demon blood, and his white robe had turned into a wet purple robe, while his black hair had turned into red hair. Even the pitch-black and icy cold burial of Heaven's sword was stained with a layer of blood. The hundreds of thousands of demons who were lucky enough to survive were terrified to the extreme and didn't dare to lay a hand on Ji Tianqing anymore. Everyone's impression and feeling towards Ji Tianqing was only left with one word: killing God. Only these two words could describe his unparalleled ferocity. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Sheng Pingji and the others had been lying in ambush at the periphery of the campsite. From the start of Ji Tianqing's massacre until now, for an entire hour, everyone was on tenterhooks and extremely nervous. There were several times when everyone almost couldn't help but want to take action to save Ji Tianqing. After all, Ji Tianqing was facing a 100,000-strong army alone, and no matter how they looked at it, he would definitely die. However, Ji Tianqing was safe and sound. Everyone suppressed their impulses and continued to wait for the signal. This 1 hour was very short for Ji Tianqing. To Yi Xianqing, Wei Yu, and the others, it was exceptionally long and torturous. Finally, Ji Tianqing saw that the time was ripe. He waved his palm and shot out a dazzling golden light. Shwa! The golden light flew into the sky and immediately turned into a golden dragon that was over 3,000 meters long. It raised its head and let out an earth-shattering dragon roar. Roar! The divine might of the golden dragon was clearly displayed. This was the signal that Ji Tianqing and the generals had agreed upon. Since the signal had been sent out, it meant that the time had come. Without any hesitation, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others immediately ignited the talismans in their hands. In the next moment, dozens of divine thunder talismans and divine light talismans exploded under the defensive formation around the camp. Boom, 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 boom. With the deafening explosion, dazzling lightning and divine white light immediately illuminated the entire camp. The dark sky within a radius of a few hundred miles became dazzling. The light was so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. The terrifying explosion not only brought about loud sounds and dazzling light, but also astonishing destructive power. The defensive formation around the camp was immediately blasted with more than a dozen holes and gaps. The entire formation shook violently, and many cracks appeared on its surface. But this was only the beginning of the destruction and disaster. Ji Tianqing had distributed more than 100 talismans to the generals. The 5 generals and more than 20 generals followed closely behind and released the star talismans. Boom, 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 boom. There was another earth-shattering explosion around the camp. The silver light of the stars soared into the sky, like the bright moon in the sky. The brilliant star divine fire tore open the gap in the defensive formation and expanded it by several times. Tens of thousands of devil soldiers guarding the gap were also engulfed by the star divine fire and burned to ashes on the spot. After this round of bombardment, the defensive grand formation, which was already broken, became riddled with holes and extremely tattered. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others had completed their mission. They immediately sent out the signal and ordered the army outside the camp to attack. In the next moment, the 500,000 human soldiers lying in ambush outside the camp let out shocking battle cries and surged towards the demon camp like a tide. The human army had finally attacked. The final battle had arrived. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others firmly guarded the gap in the defensive formation and did their best to kill the demon soldiers that came to stop them. Although there were only 20 or so of them, and it was impossible for them to stop the charge of tens of thousands of soldiers, they needed to buy time. However, what they needed to do was to buy time. In just 100 breaths of time, the human army would be able to break into the camp. Fierce battles continued to take place. The 20 or so human generals were besieged by large numbers of demon soldiers and suffered destructive blows. They were quickly wounded by the demon soldiers. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their arms and legs were even cut off. But they stubbornly held on with their strong willpower. Finally, 100 breaths of time was up. The 500,000 human soldiers successfully passed through the gap in the formation and charged into the demon camp. When the two armies met, they immediately engaged in the fiercest battle. At the same time, Ji Tianqing, deep in the camp, increased the pace of his attack. He summoned Lan Kuan, forefather Sanju, and the Golden Mountain King to charge with him and slaughter the demon soldiers on the ground. Lan Kuan was as large as a mountain. It sprayed out icy flames and rampaged across the battlefield. Forefather Sanju turned into a giant tree that was 10,000 zhang tall. He waved his 100,000 branches and swept through everything like sharp swords. He pushed forward. Everywhere he passed, all obstacles were flattened. No matter if it was the broken walls, the fortifications, or the bodies of the demon soldiers, they were all crushed to pieces. The Golden Mountain King roared excitedly. He swung his enormous golden hammer and smashed piles of demon soldiers. Each time the hammer smashed down, a deep pit would be left in the ground. The bottom of the pit was filled with demon corpses. His courageous charge was more like a game of whack-a-mole. As time passed, the casualties of the demon army increased. The scales of victory tilted in favor of the humans and gradually stabilized. This great battle that shook the heavens and earth continued for an entire day. Only in the middle of the night did the battle come to an end. All of the western camp had been completely destroyed. It had been flattened by the shockwaves of the battle. The million-strong demon army had been completely wiped out. Only 20,000 remained and they had fled in all directions. Of the 500,000 human soldiers, only 120,000 had died. The 5 generals were all heavily wounded. Of the 20-plus commanders, 5 had died in battle. While this loss seemed very heavy, compared to the achievement of destroying the million-strong demon army, this was an inconceivable victory. After the battle ended, the hundreds of thousands of human soldiers raised their weapons and cheered at the top of their lungs. Marshal Ji is mighty. The god of death is invincible. With Marshal Ji leading the army, our race will win. Similar cheers and shouts erupted like a mountain torrent, reverberating endlessly between the heavens and the earth, shaking one's eardrums. Chapter 21:12. The soldiers only knew that this battle was a complete victory. Ji Tianqing had personally killed 400,000 demons. His reputation as the Azura would spread throughout the world. Everyone was ecstatic and they admired Ji Tianqing to the extreme. Only Ji Tianqing knew that he had gained more than that. After this battle, not only had his prestige reached the peak, his strength had also reached the peak after being tempered by killing. He was only a step away from breaking through to the martial sage realm. He could clearly feel that his strength had reached a critical point and he could break through to the martial sage realm at any time. It's a pity that the battle ended so quickly. I wish that a demon sage would appear and fight with me for 3,000 rounds. In that case, I would definitely be able to break through to the martial sage realm in the midst of the battle. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and looked down at the battlefield as he muttered regretfully. At that moment, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Sheng Pingji and the rest flew to his side. The 5 generals were in a sorry state. Their armors were shattered, and their bodies were covered in blood and wounds. Their helmets were broken and their hair was messy. Their faces were covered in blood. Both Ban Yunshan and Tua Hai had lost an arm and a leg. Their injuries were even more severe. However, the 5 of them were excited and emotional. General Ji, we have won the battle. Wei Yu cupped his fists towards Ji Tianqing and reported in a sonorous tone, this general has already sent out 50,000 elite troops to pursue and kill the fleeing devils. Yi Xianqing bowed respectfully and said excitedly, General Ji, we have used 500,000 soldiers to kill 1,000,000 demons. This is a miracle that only happens once in 100 years. It is a battle achievement that will shock the world. Sheng Pingji's tone was also very excited. His eyes were shining as he said, among the million devils, 400,000 were killed by Marshal Ji. The name of the Azura is terrifying. After this battle, General Ji's name will spread throughout the world and shock the world. Although everyone was praising him, Ji Tianqing was very calm. He waved his hand and said, "First, report the casualties. Quickly comfort the injured soldiers and deal with the aftermath. Also, all of you are seriously injured. Quickly return to the Celestial Lin Pass to recuperate." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest cupped their fists to show that they understood. After an hour, the battlefield was cleaned up. Ji Tianqing and the other generals led 380,000 soldiers back to the Celestial Lin Pass. Ji Tianqing and a few other generals were flying in the sky as the army advanced on the wasteland in a grandiose manner. Yi Xuanqing's face was full of doubts. After hesitating for a long time, he could not help but ask the question in his heart. "General Ji, when we attacked the West Camp, I was worried about the demon's camp." The demon race had a total of 3 military camps. Apart from the Western Camp, there was also the Northern Camp and the Eastern Camp. The 3 camps were only half a day's distance. When we attacked the West Camp, the other 2 camps must have received the news. Why didn't they send reinforcements? Hearing Yi Xuanqing's question, Wei Yu, Sheng Pingji, and the others quickly nodded in agreement. Obviously, they also had the same question. Ji Tianqing looked at them and explained calmly, "Firstly, even if the other 2 camps received the news, they would secretly laugh at us and think that we are seeking our own deaths. How can a mere 500,000 soldiers attack the West Camp with 1 million soldiers? Secondly, after the army set out, I also sent out 40,000 scouts to move around the 2 camps and keep a close watch on them. The generals of the 2 camps are not stupid. They would not dare to act rashly." Hearing his words, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were suddenly enlightened. No wonder. General Ji was already prepared and made arrangements in advance. 40,000 scouts. That's 4 times the usual number of soldiers. All the scouts were sent out and loitering outside the 2 camps. This is to tell them not to act rashly. If they send reinforcements to the West Camp, the Celestial Lin Pass will send a large army to stop them. Ha! I didn't expect the situation to be under General Ji's control. If General Yi did not ask, we would not have thought of this. No wonder there is a rumor in the north that General Ji is the one who understands the demons the best. It seems like it is true. Everyone chatted and discussed along the way. Unknowingly, they had returned to the Celestial Lin Pass. Before the army reached the Celestial Lin Pass, the news of victory had been sent back. When the army entered the Celestial Lin Pass, the pass was filled with cheers and excitement. No one expected that Ji Tianqing would lead the army to attack the West Camp. The most unbelievable thing was that he actually won. The soldiers who returned in triumph were all excited and proud. They enjoyed the glory and praise of the brave. The soldiers who stayed behind to guard the pass could only be envious and jealous. They discussed and asked about the battle. For the entire day, the Celestial Lin Pass was not quiet. On the second day, Xia Wudao gathered all the generals and held a commendation ceremony in the square. The soldiers who participated in the battle had made such great contributions. Of course, they would be rewarded handsomely. What's more, these soldiers had followed Ji Tianqing into battle and received double the rewards. Even the soldiers who died or were injured in the battle received double the compensation. After the news spread, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the target of everyone's jealousy. When the 20 generals who stayed behind to guard the pass saw Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others get promoted and rewarded again after a few days, they were so jealous that their eyes turned red. Especially Sheng Pingji, who was the target of their jealousy. Previously, everyone lined up outside Ji Tianqing's door and requested to go to battle. Everyone could not bear the humiliation and left dejectedly. Only Xingpingji was thick-skinned. He pestered Ji Tianqing and followed the army to battle. And now, he had become one of the 5 meritorious officials. He enjoyed the glory of bravery and was promoted and rewarded in front of everyone. Compared to the limitless glory now, his previous humiliation was not even worth mentioning. The 20 generals regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. They only hated themselves for not being thick-skinned enough. If they could be as shameless as Xingpingji, they would be the ones receiving commendations, being conferred titles, and receiving double the military merits. In a short 3 days, the news of Ji Tianqing annihilating the million-strong demon army spread throughout the northern battlefield. The people of the Changlong Empire were wild with excitement. They were only waiting for Ji Tianqing to expel the demon army and they could return to their homeland. The people of the Red Sun Empire were full of anticipation. They only hoped that Ji Tianqing would save them as soon as possible. Only the people of the White Frost Empire were the calmest. After all, they were numb to Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. Even if someone said that Ji Tianqing poked a hole in the sky, they would accept it calmly. 3 days later, Ji Tianqing set off again. This time, he still brought Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3. He only led an army of 400,000 to attack a fortress. Many generals found Xia Wudao and begged him by all means, wanting to follow Ji Tianqing to battle. But Ji Tianqing said that Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were reliable. They were all people he was used to using. He did not want to change to other generals. When he said this, all the generals felt despair and helplessness. They only hated that they were blind and did not follow Ji Tianqing decisively. Chapter 21:13. In half a month, Ji Tianqing went to battle 4 times. Every time, he brought Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others to battle, and the result was a complete victory. Even though tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of soldiers would die in every battle. After 4 consecutive battles, more than half of the soldiers under the general's command had been killed. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, asked Xia Wudao to transfer soldiers from the other generals to replenish the numbers. Anyway, he wanted to ensure that the general's subordinates were always at full strength. The other generals did not have any battles to fight and were idling in the Linxian Pass all day. Now that their soldiers were divided, how could they let it go? They all ran to find Xia Wudao to reason with them. The group of people was in an uproar and were full of resentment. Xia Wudao had a headache. Even if he used the authority of a general, he could not suppress the generals. Helpless, he could only think of a way. He publicly posted a notice in the Linxian Pass to recruit soldiers to join Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others. After the news was announced, the soldiers guarding the Linxian Pass were in an uproar. In just an hour, tens of thousands of people gathered in the square and enthusiastically responded to Xia Wudao's summons. After all, everyone knew that if they joined Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others, they would be able to follow Ji Tianqing to attack the strongholds and camps of the demon race and gain merits. Most importantly, Ji Tianqing was victorious in every battle and had never lost. After the victory, the rewards that the soldiers received were also doubled. All along, the soldiers of the Linxian Pass were very envious and jealous. Now that there was an opportunity in front of them, even a fool would know to fight for it. The problem was solved. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other subordinates could recover to 100,000 before each battle. The soldiers also joined voluntarily, and the other generals had nothing to say. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Ji Tianqing won 4 battles and captured 2 strongholds, as well as the north and east barracks. At least 1.5 million demons lost their lives in these 4 wars. Ji Tianqing had killed as many as 500,000 devils with his own hands. The demon army was completely routed. Only about 400,000 were left. They retreated from the celestial Overlook mountain pass and fled to the north. This time, Ji Tianqing did not have the intention to go into battle. He left the task of chasing after the remaining soldiers to Xia Wudao and the other generals. It was because he had received a communication jade slip last night. It was a black communication jade slip. It came from the north and carried a faint demonic aura. Without a doubt, it was Ji Ku who had sent him a message. For the past 2 years, regardless of whether there was any important information, Ji Ku would send him a message every month. This had already become a promise between the two, regardless of rain or shine. There wasn't much content in the jade slip, only 2 short sentences. However, it made Ji Tianqing frown and ponder for a long time. The demon race's holy city and Baiming Palace have been destroyed. They are currently recuperating. They have lost many battles in the north. The demon army is already thinking of retreating. They might retreat soon. Ji Tianqing sat alone in the secret chamber. He held the communication jade slip in his hand and pondered for a long time. The demon race's holy city was destroyed by Luo Shui's clone. The ancestor demon god and the 2 great demon sages were severely injured by Luo Shui's clone. The demon army's vitality was greatly damaged. They can only recuperate. Now that they are losing in the north, it is natural for them to retreat. However, the demon army still has the upper hand in the Scarlet Sun Empire. After the second demon sage Zhang Yu escaped, he must be in the Scarlet Sun Empire. Why are they in a hurry to retreat? No. I have to hurry to the Scarlet Sun Empire and kill Zhang Yu while he is severely injured. I can't let him retreat to Baiming Mountain. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing started to prepare. The next morning, he went to the general's palace to look for Xia Wudao. Xia Wudao was in the meeting hall. He had gathered more than 20 generals to discuss the plan to chase after the remaining demons. After Ji Tianqing stepped into the hall, the generals quickly cupped their fists and bowed respectfully. Greetings, General Ji. Greetings, General Ji. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the hall and nodded to Xia Wudao. He said, General Xia, I am here today to bid farewell to everyone. Hearing this, Xia Wudao stood up with a bang. His face was full of shock. The generals in the hall were also stunned for a moment. Soon after, anxious, surprised, and reluctant expressions appeared on their faces. Xia Wudao looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and asked, Young Master Ji, why are you in such a hurry to leave? You have only been in the Immortal Pass for 20 days. You have been leading the army and bathing in blood. You have not had a good rest. Benshui and the generals have not treated you well. They did not even have the chance to express their gratitude. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and smiled. All good things must come to an end. My mission has been completed. It is time to leave. Now that the demon army outside the Immortal Pass has been defeated and fled, it is a waste of time for me to stay. The people of the Scarlet Sun Empire are in danger. They are waiting for me to help them. I cannot delay. Xia Wudao nodded. That's right. The crisis in the Scarlet Sun Empire is not over yet. There is still the Heavenly Pass 100,000 miles away waiting for you. There were 2 main battlefields in the Changlong Empire. One was the Immortal Pass, and the other was the Heavenly Pass. Ji Tianqing's original plan was to solve the crisis in the Immortal Pass first, then help the Heavenly Pass. But now, he changed his mind. No, General Xie, please tell the Changlong Saint Emperor that I will not be going to the Heavenly Pass. I have something important to do. I must go to the Scarlet Sun Empire as soon as possible. Ah! Xia Wudao was stunned. He asked in confusion, but there are still 3 million demon soldiers outside the Heavenly Pass. Ji Tianqing said with certainty, the crisis in the Immortal Pass has been solved. After you have cleared the remaining demons, you can go to the Heavenly Pass. At that time, your 5 million soldiers will join forces. Do you think you can't deal with 3 million demons? Moreover, there are internal problems in the demon race. Now, the people are in chaos. They will withdraw soon. Hearing this, Xia Wudao was relieved. He nodded and said, I see. I understand. Then, Xia Wudao stopped the meeting and led the generals to send Ji Tianqing off. He personally sent Ji Tianqing out of the meeting hall and to the square outside the hall. Young Master Ji, I won't say any more words of thanks. I will remember your kindness. If you need this old man's help in the future, just send me a message as soon as possible. This old man will definitely not refuse. Xia Wudao bowed to Ji Tianqing and said secretly, Young Master Ji, regarding the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, please believe that I will always be a disciple of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. As long as the Pillar of Heaven's mountains needs me, I will do my best to help you. Ji Tianqing looked at him deeply and nodded silently. Then, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tua Hai and Xingpingji walked in front of him and bowed to him respectfully. General Ji, it is this general's honor to meet you and fight alongside you in this life. General Ji, have a safe journey. I will always remember your kindness. If General Ji has any orders in the future, I will do my best. We are grateful that we decided to follow General Ji. But we are even more grateful to General Ji for giving us everything we have today. Without General Ji's support, we would not be where we are today. General Ji, no matter where you are, if you need anything in the future, just say the word and we will do our best. The 5 generals were also reluctant to let Ji Tianqing leave, but they knew that it was inevitable. They could only reveal the truest thoughts in their hearts at the moment of parting. Chapter 21:14. After leaving the Celestial Overlook Pass, Ji Tianqing flew into the sky and sped towards the east. Whether it was in the Empire of White Frost or the Celestial Overlook Pass, he was just a passerby. Whether it was Lu Baishuang's admiration and secret feelings, or the respect and loyalty of Wei Yu and the others, they were all worldly possessions to him. If an ordinary genius or powerhouse could reach such a level, they would already be successful and proud. But to Ji Tianqing, all of this would become a thing of the past. His future would not be limited to this world. Half a day later, Ji Tianqing flew over the Heavenly Mystery Pass. Even though the outside of the Heavenly Mystery Pass was filled with smoke and the war was in full swing. But he had no intention of stopping and continued to fly towards the Scarlet Sun Empire. Just as he said, the danger of the Celestial Overlook Pass had been resolved, and there would be more than 2 million soldiers free. Together with the 3 million soldiers guarding the Heavenly Mystery Pass, how could the 5 million soldiers not defeat the 3 million demons? He did not need to worry about this at all. What he was most concerned about now was to rush to the Scarlet Sun Empire and kill the heavily injured demon sage Cangyu. As long as he killed demon sage Cangyu, the ancestor Fiend Celestial would have no helpers for the next 10 years. Even if the North Underworld Mountain nurtured a new demon sage, it would not be a threat. The journey was boring and lonely, but Ji Tianqing was already used to it. Lan Kuan, old ancestor Sanju, and the Jin Shan King were all cultivating in the sword world. The previous series of battles had also benefited them greatly. Their combat experience and strength had been greatly improved. Soon, 10 days passed. Ji Tianqing entered the Scarlet Sun Empire and arrived at the Falling Moon Mountain Range. This vast and majestic mountain range was the barrier between the North Underworld Mountain and the Scarlet Sun Empire. Fortunately, this barrier had not been broken since the demons invaded the Luoshui divine nation. But in these 2 years, no less than 10 million human soldiers had died in the Falling Moon Mountain Range. The Falling Star Valley was the current frontline. The mountain range and land in this area had long been razed to ruins and had been overturned several times. The soil on the ground had also been dyed dark red by blood. When Ji Tianqing left the Celestial Face Pass, the Changlong Saint Emperor received the news and immediately sent a message to the Scarlet Sun Empire. Therefore, when Ji Tianqing arrived at the Starfall Valley, the Scarlet Sun Empire was already prepared to welcome him. The soldiers of the Scarlet Sun Empire had been fighting a bloody battle for more than a year, but they were still unable to defeat the Devil Race's army. Instead, the situation was getting more and more dangerous. Ever since they knew that Ji Tianqing had participated in the war and won every battle, defeating the demon army, the soldiers and people of the Qiang Empire saw him as their savior. For many days and nights, the citizens of the Scarlet Sun Empire had been waiting for Ji Tianqing to save them from the sea of war. Now, his savior had finally arrived. When the sun was setting, Ji Tianqing arrived at the mountain pass of the Starfall Valley. This valley was in the shape of a gourd. The entrance was narrow, but the inside was very spacious. It had a radius of 200 to 300 miles. More than 2 million human soldiers were stationed in the valley. Rows upon rows of houses and palaces formed a huge military camp. They were densely packed in the valley. At the entrance of the valley, there were more than 10,000 soldiers. They formed a grand guard of honor to welcome Ji Tianqing's arrival. The soldiers were in high spirits. They blew the loud bugle horn and played the inspiring drum music. They danced majestically with spears and halberds. Everyone's expression was filled with excitement, and joy. It was as if they were welcoming their savior and worshipping the 9 heavens above. Ji Tianqing had always been indifferent to fame and fortune. He did not care about these empty titles. However, when he saw the scene at the entrance of the Starfall Valley, there were some ripples in his heart. He felt a little proud. In the valley, there were more than 10,000 soldiers waiting in formation. They were all looking at him with sparkling eyes and full of excitement. At a glance, there were all pitch-black armors, cold swords, spears, and halberds. They were all emitting a majestic aura. When Ji Tianqing stepped into the Starfall Valley, the soldiers cheered loudly. "Welcome to the Starfall Valley, General Ji." The cheers of 100,000 people converged into a huge sound wave. It was more terrifying than a tsunami and more shocking than thunder. Ji Tianqing stepped into the valley with majestic steps. He was greeted by an old man in a purple robe. He led more than 20 golden-armored generals and welcomed him with a smile. The crowd stood in front of him. The purple-robed old man cupped his hands and bowed. He smiled and said, "This old man is Du Qingchang. I am the general of the Starfall Valley. Welcome, General Ji." Following that, more than 20 golden-armored generals also bowed respectfully. They said in a sonorous voice, "Welcome, General Ji." Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was a little stunned. He was silent and did not say anything. In the past few months, he had been thinking about how to fight, how to expel the demon army, and how to protect the Luoshui divine nation. He had never thought that after his consecutive victories, the name of the killing god would spread and cause such a huge commotion in the Luoshui divine nation. Today, he finally saw it for himself. The more than 2 million soldiers in the Starfall Valley, whether it was General Du Qingchang or the many soldiers, all respected him and warmly welcomed him. This was enough to prove that his position in the hearts of the people was higher than the Saint Emperor of a nation. He was like a god. He had never thought of becoming famous, of being praised by the people of the world, of being worshipped by millions of people. But now, he had unintentionally done it. And this result was mainly caused by the invasion of the demon army. To Ji Tianqing, this was a supreme honor and trust, but also a great pressure and responsibility. He became more and more determined to expel the demon army no matter what, and even destroy the entire North Underworld mountain. He hoped that in this world, the demon race would no longer cause chaos and bring disaster to the world. After a moment, Ji Tianqing nodded to the crowd. He raised his hand and said, "General Du, generals, please rise." Du Qingchang and the other generals stood up. Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a playful tone, "Just now, I heard General Du and the other generals call me General Ji." Du Qingchang stroked his white beard and said with a smile, General Ji, since you joined the war, you first helped the White Frost Empire expel the demon army, and then you helped the Changlong Empire resolve a crisis. No matter where you go, you hold the position of Deputy General. You have won every battle and have never lost. The number of demon race that died under your sword is at least over 1 million. Your name of killing God has long been spread throughout the world, respected and praised by the martial artists of my race. But we are all people in the military, so it is most appropriate to call you General Ji. Moreover, since you have come to the Starfall Valley, the position of Deputy General is yours. This old man and the 2 million soldiers are still looking forward to you taking charge of the situation, leading everyone to expel the demon race, and to victory. Du Qingchang was a white-haired old man who had lived for nearly 2,000 years. He was a martial arts master with great prestige in the Scarlet Sun Empire. However, even a veteran martial sage like him was extremely respectful and courteous towards Ji Tianqing. He even addressed him with the word, Sir. Chapter 21:15. Ji Tianqing, Du Qingchang, and the others exchanged greetings at the entrance of the valley for a while. Subsequently, Du Qingchang introduced more than 20 golden-armored generals to Ji Tianqing. Most of these people were the elite generals of the Scarlet Sun Empire. They were all battle-hardened generals. Everyone was familiar with Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. They respected and worshipped him very much, treating him as their idol. Even the eyes that looked at him were fiery and blazing, flickering with a bright light. Half an hour later, everyone escorted Ji Tianqing back to the Starfall Valley and entered the commander's palace. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there was a huge sand table in the middle. Normally, Du Qingchang would gather all the generals here to discuss matters. After everyone entered the hall, Du Qingchang pointed to the huge sand table and said to Ji Tianqing, Commander Ji, this old man will immediately announce the news of your arrival and appoint you as the deputy commander. This is the defensive layout of the Starfall Valley and the demon army. The sand table marks the defensive situation of our army and the demon army in detail. You can study it. In addition, this old man has already prepared the information regarding the battle situation and the demon generals. After this old man arranges your residence, I will immediately send someone to deliver the jade slip to you so that you can understand the situation as soon as possible. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Commander Du is very considerate. Many thanks. Du Qingchang quickly waved his hand and said in a sincere tone, Commander Ji is too polite. This old man dares not accept it. For you to come to the Starfall Valley to help, it is already our blessing and fortune. Ji Tianqing saw that he was about to say a lot of words of thanks again, so he quickly interrupted him. All right, time is tight and the mission is important. Let's not talk about pleasantries. Commander Du, arrange my residence first. I also need some time to understand the situation in the Starfall Valley. All right. Then it's settled. Du Qingchang liked his straightforwardness the most. He said happily, this old man will arrange it for you immediately. Before Ji Tianqing came, he was very familiar with Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. He had been very nervous, thinking about how to receive Ji Tianqing. After all, such godlike genius experts would always have unimaginable hobbies and strange temperaments. Du Qingchang was afraid that his negligence or lack of care would anger Ji Tianqing. Now, seeing that Ji Tianqing was very amiable and did not make things difficult for him or put on airs, he finally felt relieved. Within a short span of 100 breaths, Du Qingchang had arranged a place for Ji Tianqing to stay. His residence was within the commander-in-chief's palace. However, it was in the quietest and most magnificent palace at the back, and it was equipped with dozens of guards and young and beautiful maids. Du Qingchang was a shrewd old man, and he considered things very thoroughly. The guards were young and handsome, and the maids were beautiful and charming. They were all intelligent and quick-witted, ready to offer themselves at any time. Du Qingchang did this to please Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing saw all of this and felt a chill in his heart, and couldn't help muttering to himself. This old thing Du Qingchang, he's becoming more and more cautious the longer he lives. I don't know what kind of dirty ideas he has in his head. Arranging more than 30 young and beautiful maids for me is one thing, but he even arranged more than 30 little white faces for me. What's going on? Do I look like that kind of person? After muttering to himself, he called out to his entourage in a dignified tone, a strange expression on his face as he scolded, "The maids stay, and the young guards withdraw." The attendant that Du Qingchang had arranged for Yang Kai was a beautiful woman who looked to be about 30 years old. Her name was Guanji, and she was extremely charming. This woman was tall and sexy, with a pair of seductive eyes, and her entire body exuded an enchanting aura. From an 80-year-old man to an 8-year-old boy, it was difficult for anyone to refuse her gentle service. If a beautiful young girl was like a green plum, then she was like a ripe peach. She was wearing a fiery red dress. After respectfully listening to his orders, she hurriedly bowed and saluted. Since Marshal Ji has given the order, Guanji will naturally comply. Saying so, she walked to the door of the study and ordered all the male guards to withdraw. After passing on the order, she gracefully walked over to Ji Tianqing and said in a soft voice, "Marshal Ji must be tired after such a long journey. Guanji has already ordered the maids to prepare a hot spring for Marshal Ji to wash your body and relax your mind." Ji Tianqing was sitting in front of his desk, flipping through jade slips and books to understand the situation in Falling Star Valley. Suddenly hearing Guanji's words, he felt a little strange and raised his head to look at her. As soon as he looked up, he met Guanji's watery red phoenix eyes, and he felt as if he had fallen into a hot spring, like a spring breeze, warm and comfortable. Even the depths of his soul faintly felt hot and throbbing. If his mind wasn't firm enough, he would have immediately turned into a ferocious wolf and pressed Guanji onto the desk, doing something indescribable. But Ji Tianqing's soul was extremely firm, and in an instant, he suppressed his evil thoughts and calmed his soul down. He coldly glanced at Guanji and said in a low voice, "You are not a human, but a descendant of the Mei-Nu tribe that went extinct 1,000 years ago. You are born with the power to captivate souls and confuse people's hearts. Almost no man can escape your temptation. Moreover, you cultivate the Mei-Nu soul enchanting art, so when you cultivate with a martial Tao master, you can absorb their strength." Hearing his words, Guanji's body immediately shook, as if she had been struck by lightning. The gentle flirtatious look in her eyes immediately disappeared, and her blushing and shy face turned a little pale. She stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief, unable to believe that Ji Tianqing had seen through her with a single glance. In front of Ji Tianqing, all her disguises had been exposed, as if she was standing naked in a world of ice and snow. She felt fear from the bottom of her heart and didn't dare look into Ji Tianqing's eyes. At this time, Ji Tianqing said in an indifferent tone, "You were born with a seductive art and are used to using your beauty to serve others, but Ben Shuai has always disdained such things and disdained to comment. Go back and tell Du Qingchang that everyone is working for the Luo River Divine Kingdom, so he doesn't need to be so cautious. Ben Shuai will naturally do his best. If he dares to act smart again, don't blame Ben Shuai for holding him accountable." Guanji immediately recovered and knelt to the ground in fear and trepidation, sobbing as she said, "Commander Ji, please calm down. This lowly concubine has offended you, this lowly concubine deserves 10,000 deaths." But Commander Du went to great lengths to invite this lowly concubine to serve you. This lowly concubine is sincere and kind, I hope Commander Ji won't blame me. This lowly concubine promises to never offend you again in the future, I hope Commander Ji will be magnanimous and allow this lowly concubine to continue serving you. Ji Tianqing didn't raise his head and continued reading, his tone calm as he said, "Since this is your first offense and you were instructed by Du Qingchang, Ben Shuai will spare you this time. If you want to stay by Ben Shuai's side and serve him, then put away your racial talent and seductive arts, otherwise you will only be rejected by Ben Shuai." When Guanji saw him relent, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief and kowtowed as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Chapter 21:16. After bowing and apologizing, Guanji really restrained herself a lot. The soul-sucking power she exuded, as well as the charm that originated from her soul, all disappeared without a trace. When she turned and left the study, she looked just like an ordinary woman. She was just more beautiful and charming than an ordinary woman. When her figure disappeared at the door of the study, Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at her with a deep gaze. Then, a black light flashed in his palm and the sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. Burial of Heaven, I have something to ask of you. He spoke to Buried Heaven, who was in the sword, through voice transmission. The next moment, Burial of Heaven was awakened and responded in a low voice, "What's the matter?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "I don't know what that old man Du Qingchang is thinking, but he actually sent a descendant of the Cha Nu tribe to serve me." Suddenly hearing this sentence, Burial of Heaven was stunned for a moment and said in a stunned tone, 1,000 years have passed, but there are still descendants of the Cha Nu tribe active in the world. In this day and age, there are very few people who know the details of the Cha Nu tribe, right? Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, 1,000 years ago, the Cha Nu tribe was on the verge of extinction and was so weak that they could only rely on the great empires and martial Dao forces. This tribe, which is both good and evil, can not only support the empires, but also bring disaster to the world, causing chaos among the various races and making the people unable to make a living. Guanji is most likely attached to the imperial family of the Scarlet Sun Empire. Du Qingchang is probably old and muddle-headed, so he made this decision because of her. She just left, so follow her secretly and see if she has any problems. Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before agreeing. In the past, there were some grievances between you and the Cha Nu tribe. Although it was just a trivial matter to you, you may not take it to heart. But for the Cha Nu tribe, you destroyed their plan to attach themselves to the vast divine empire, causing them to be exiled and hated by everyone. Moreover, you even injured Empress Tantai of the Cha Nu tribe and almost crippled her seduction technique. Now that the descendant of the Cha Nu tribe is entangled with you, it seems that this is karma, alas. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes and said snappily, "Why do I feel like you're gloating? Back then, Empress Tantai of the Cha Nu tribe tried to seduce me and make me her servant. She even tried to bring chaos to the divine court of the divine kingdom of Taihao. How could I forgive her?" Burial of Heaven said in a strange tone, "Empress Tantai is a peerless beauty in the human world, and she was born with the ability to charm. In the words of you men, she is a beauty of the highest quality that only appears once in 10,000 years. She is the dream partner of millions of heroes. I'm offering myself as your pillow because I want to be together with you, and cling onto the pillar of Heaven's mountain. But you don't understand the situation at all. You picked her up from the bed and threw her onto the square. What kind of humiliation is this?" The other party was infuriated, so of course he would attack you. Yet you heavily injured her and almost crippled her seduction technique. Tell me, aren't you recklessly wasting God's gift? After that incident, I don't know how many men scolded you behind your back and envied you. Listening to Burial of Heaven talk about the past thousands of years ago, Ji Tianqing could only smile bitterly. The world knew my temperament back then. I used the sword as my companion, always alone. I only fell in love once in my life, but it didn't end well. I always despised women like Empress Tantai, so how could I have sex with her? Wouldn't it ruin the name of the Kenshin and make the world laugh at me?" Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then stopped talking about this topic and said in a low voice, "Your enmity with the Cha Nu tribe hasn't been eliminated. If your identity is leaked, it's hard to guarantee that the Cha Nu tribe won't retaliate. To be on the safe side, I'd better go and observe Guanji in person. I hope she just stumbled upon you by accident and didn't deliberately approach you." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. The Cha Nu tribe has already died out, and now only a few scattered descendants exist in the world. I hope they don't make a mistake. If they really do harm to me, the entire Cha-Nu tribe will become history. Burial of Heaven continued, although I've recovered half of my strength and the sword spirit can leave the sword body, it can only move within a radius of 3,000 miles. I can follow Guanji and secretly observe her movements without being discovered by her. But if she leaves the range of 3,000 miles, I can't do anything. In short, you have to be careful and be careful. Ji Tianqing nodded to express his understanding. Burial of Heaven didn't say anything more and flew out of the sword body, turning into a wisp of invisible black qi and disappeared into the night sky. Ji Tianqing put away Burial of Heaven and continued to read the books and jade slips to understand the situation in the Starfall Valley. Unknowingly, a whole night passed. Ji Tianqing had been in the study, reading a mountain of information and jade slips without sleeping. Burial of Heaven was hidden in the night sky, quietly observing Guanji. To its surprise, Guanji had been in her residence in the backyard of the general's palace, meditating and cultivating without going out. She didn't do anything out of the ordinary. After dawn, she got up and washed up, then served Ji Tianqing according to the rules. Burial of Heaven secretly observed her for a whole day, but found nothing unusual, so it flew back to Burial of Heaven and reported the situation to Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing heard the news, he didn't say anything and just muttered, "I hope I'm just being paranoid." After that, he devoted himself to the war, planning how to attack the demon camp. Late the next night, the general's palace was dimly lit and quiet. Guanji had been resting in her room without any unusual movements. It wasn't until the middle of the night that she quietly got up and took out a black fox mask. When she put on the mask, her whole body became invisible, completely disappearing into the darkness. Then, she quietly flew out of the general's palace, crossed the dark night sky, and flew out of Falling Star Valley. She didn't disturb anyone, and after leaving Falling Star Valley, she flew east. After an entire hour, she flew for thousands of miles before landing on a barren mountain. After landing on the top of the mountain, she cautiously observed her surroundings, and after making sure no one was following her, she sneaked into the mountain. Inside the mountain, there was a man-made cave about 10 feet in radius. The walls were inlaid with pearls and gems, and the floor was covered with white jade. Deep in the cave, there was a wide jade bed covered with luxurious fox and moon fox furs. A beautiful woman with an explosive figure and a curvaceous figure was currently resting on a jade bed with her eyes closed. This woman wore a 10-foot-long golden dress and a 2-foot-tall luxurious crown on her head, which was studded with rare gems. Her beautiful face was soul-stirring, like a young girl in her 20s. But the seductive aura she exuded was more mature and charming than any other woman. Guanji was already a flirtatious beauty, but compared to this woman, she paled in comparison. Both were charming and moving, but this woman was completely natural, without a trace. Chapter 21:17. When Guanji entered the cave, the woman in the golden dress was resting with her eyes closed. Her beautiful face, seductive aura, and languid posture made it impossible for anyone to extricate themselves from it. Guanji arrived in front of the jade bed and respectfully knelt on the ground, her palms flat as she saluted. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Without a doubt, the beautiful woman lying on the jade bed was the queen of the Cha-Nu tribe. Hearing Guanji's voice, she didn't open her eyes and continued to lie on her side, revealing her beautiful curves. "Guanji, what's the result?" She gently opened her cherry lips and asked in a soft voice. This kind of voice and emphasis had a natural charm to it, no matter who heard it, they wouldn't feel disgusted. Guanji respectfully bowed her head and answered truthfully, "Reporting to Your Majesty, as the rumors said before, Ji Tianqing really did come to Falling Star Valley 2 days ago. Her Majesty instructed Guanji to keep everything confidential and not report to him face to face unless there is something important. Therefore, in order not to arouse his suspicion, Guanji endured for 2 days before reporting. The queen slowly turned over, still lying on her side, her right hand supporting her cheek as she looked deeply at Guanji and asked, Du Qingchang has arranged for you to be Ji Tianqing's personal maid. You should have had a lot of contact with him these past 2 days, have you ever had any intimate moments with him? For some reason, the queen's tone was a bit strange and her eyes were quite cold, with a trace of hatred hidden deep within them. Guanji still had her head lowered so she couldn't see the queen's expression. She gently shook her head and said regretfully, reporting to your majesty, it didn't happen. This subordinate tried to use my charm technique to seduce him, but he saw through this subordinate's identity and origin at a glance and sternly refused. He also said that he despised my tribe's charm technique the most. Hearing Guanji's answer, the empress's eyes flashed with relief. The corners of her mouth rose slightly, forming a playful smile as she said in a low voice, so it really is him. Guanji was stunned for a moment, then asked in disbelief, Your Majesty, you mean Ji Tianqing is the Kenshin from 1,000 years ago? The empress nodded slightly and said angrily, there was news from the celestial face past that Xia Wudao turned pale with fright when he saw Ji Tianqing. He called out for his teacher and almost knelt down to greet him. This news had long been spread, causing endless discussions in the martial arts world. Before this, I didn't dare to confirm whether the news was true. After all, that bastard had been dead for 1,000 years. But now that I've heard what you've said, I'm completely certain that he's Kenshin. Guanji was silent for a moment, then nodded, this subordinate has carefully thought about it and feels that it should be him. After all, Ji Tianqing is too young. It's impossible for him to know about the existence of my clan, let alone meet our descendants. But when he saw this subordinate, he immediately recognized this subordinate as a member of the Cha Nu tribe, and even mentioned this subordinate's bewitching technique. The empress sneered and said, that's right. My tribe's bewitching technique and soul-sucking power are unparalleled in the world. Not to mention men, even the monster race, demon race, or other races, as long as they are male, no one can resist it. But he rejected you without any hesitation, and even disdained my tribe's bewitching technique. Only he would be so unromantic, like a dead tree. Guanji, tell me, how can there be a cat in this world that doesn't steal fish? How can there be a man who isn't lustful? Guanji thought seriously for a moment, then shook her head. The empress sneered and said in a resentful tone, but he's a freak, so self-disciplined that it makes one's hair stand on end. Sometimes this empress even thinks that he doesn't like women, but men. Guanji shook her head again, Du Qingchang also arranged many young male guards for him. Some were handsome, some were masculine, and some were feminine. It could be said that they all had their own characteristics. But when he saw those male guards, he flew into a rage and ordered his subordinates to withdraw the guards. He also said that if Du Qingchang acted on his own again, he would punish him. The empress suddenly frowned and whispered angrily, such a ruthless person should have died 1,000 years ago, why did he appear again? The heavens are simply blind. Guanji was silent for a while, not knowing how to respond. The empress gradually suppressed her anger and resentment and waved her hand, since Ji Tianqing has seen through your identity, it is very likely that he will suspect you. You shouldn't take too long to avoid being discovered by him. Immediately go to Falling Star Valley. If he has any news or movements, you don't need to report it in person, just send a message in secret. Guanji cupped his hands in obeisance, Your Majesty, please rest assured. From Ji Tianqing's previous actions, it is clear that he is carrying a heavy responsibility and only wants to expel the demon race army as soon as possible. He has already been in Falling Star Valley for 2 days, and in 2 or 3 days at most, he will definitely lead the army to battle. At that time, Your Majesty will have the opportunity to act. The Empress suddenly sneered and said in a joking tone, Yes. This Empress can't wait. This Empress really wants to see what kind of expression he will have when he sees this Empress again. The humiliation he inflicted on this empress made this empress a laughingstock for 300 or 400 years. How can this empress forget this hatred? This time, this empress will pay him back double and wash away the shame. This empress will make him kneel at my feet and lick my toes. Ha 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 ha. At the end of her speech, the empress raised her head and laughed proudly, her body trembling and rippling. Guanji didn't stay any longer and bowed to her. May your majesty's wish be fulfilled, this subordinate will take his leave. Then, she turned and left the cave, quickly disappearing into the night. The cave returned to silence. Empress Tantai lay on the bed with her eyes closed and whispered to herself, everyone knows that the second demon Saint Song Yu is overseeing the battlefield of Qi Yang Empire. Almost everyone thinks that Song Yu is in the demon race camp outside Heavenly Wolf Pass. But this empress is very clear that Song Yu is not there at all, but in the camp outside Falling Star Valley. Ji Tianqing is so eager for quick success, once he goes to battle, he will encounter Song Yu. No matter how much of a genius he is definitely not Song Yu's opponent, and he will definitely return in defeat. He will be seriously injured and retreat in defeat, and his invincible legend will come to an end. At that time, this empress will humiliate him. I really want to see what kind of expression he will have when the time comes. About half an hour later, Guanji quietly returned to Falling Star Valley without attracting anyone's attention. Seeing that everything in the commander's palace was as usual and there was nothing unusual, she rested at ease. Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing gathered more than 20 generals and discussed matters in the study. Chapter 21:18. After 2 hours of interaction, Ji Tianqing had a good understanding of their natures. Then, he called out the names of the 6 generals and asked them to stay. The other 20 generals were all dismissed and left the study. When only Ji Tianqing and the 6 generals were left in the study, he said, "The 6 of you are all generals that can catch Ben Shuai's eye. Tonight, Ben Shuai will be leading the army to battle. As for where he will be attacking, it must be kept a secret for now. This is a good opportunity for you to make a name for yourselves. I hope you will cherish it." The 6 generals were very familiar with his legendary deeds. When they heard that they were going to battle tonight, they were immediately excited and overjoyed. "That's great. We will be able to follow Marshal Ji to battle tonight. Many thanks for Marshal Ji's support and for giving us the chance to prove ourselves. Marshal Ji. May this general be so bold as to ask, if we win the battle, will the military merit reward be doubled? Heh, you even know this?" Ji Tianqing glanced at the generals, both annoyed and amused. The 6 generals didn't feel awkward and quickly nodded in agreement. Of course. We are all familiar with Marshal Ji's legendary deeds and experiences. To tell you the truth, before Marshal Ji came to Starfall Valley, this general had already regarded Marshal Ji as his idol. Marshal Ji, not only are your martial prowess outstanding and your schemes unparalleled, you are also very generous to your subordinates. This is something that everyone knows. This general is not flattering you, but Marshal Ji's martial prowess, talent, schemes, and breadth of mind are enough to conquer all the generals and soldiers in the world. You are a peerless martial talent that only appears once in 1,000 years. To be able to fight for you on the battlefield in this lifetime is a blessing that we have cultivated for 3 lifetimes. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, "Since you know Ben Shuai so well, you should know that Ben Shuai has never liked to be flattered, much less cared about false reputation. Don't flatter Ben Shuai and don't flatter him. If you have the energy, you might as well use it on the battlefield." The 6 generals hurriedly restrained their smiles and put on a solemn expression. They cupped their hands and said in a sonorous tone, "This general will follow Marshal Ji's instructions." Then, the general with the handlebar mustache asked carefully, "General Ji, about the military merits and rewards." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said decisively, "Same old rules, double." The 6 generals were greatly relieved. Their faces were filled with pleasant surprise as they bowed in unison. Long live General Ji! General Ji is wise. Great Marshal Ji! On behalf of the 100,000 soldiers under my command, this general thanks General Ji for your generosity. With Marshal Ji's words, this general and the 100,000 warriors under my command will definitely sacrifice our lives for him. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a dignified tone, "All right, go back and prepare for war. Tonight, we will gather outside the Valley of Fallen Stars. As you command." The 6 generals cupped their fists and replied in unison. After that, they left the study room full of ambition and went back to reorganize their troops with glowing faces. The study room fell into silence. Ji Tianqing closed his eyes and rubbed his eyebrows, thinking about tonight's battle plan. At this time, soft footsteps sounded and a refreshing woman's fragrance wafted into his nose. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes and saw Guanji in a white dress, carrying a jade plate as she gracefully walked into the study room. She came to Ji Tianqing's side and took out a pot of spirit tea and 2 plates of spirit fruit from the jade plate and placed them in front of Ji Tianqing. "General Ji, you didn't sleep all night because of the battle, so you must be tired. This lowly concubine has prepared some calming tea and fruits for you, please enjoy them." Guanji Qiao smiled as she looked at Ji Tianqing, her eyes sparkling like autumn water, causing one's heart to itch. At this moment, she was wearing a long, moon-white dress that accentuated her perfect figure. However, she had put away her innate charm and seductive power, so she didn't appear wanton or charming at all. Instead, her temperament was gentle and virtuous. Ji Tianqing glanced at her but didn't show the slightest appreciation. Instead, he frowned and said in a displeased tone, "Who told you to wear this white dress? Take it off." Guanji froze for a moment and immediately lowered her head, her pretty face and white neck blushing. "General Ji, is this the place?" Her voice was as small as a mosquito's and her posture was shy and timid. Obviously, she had misunderstood. Ji Tianqing frowned again and said in a dignified tone, "What nonsense are you thinking? Benshuai's meaning is that you go back and change your clothes, otherwise don't appear in front of Benshuai again." "Ah." Guanji was stunned, showing a bewildered expression on his face. Ji Tianqing saw her stupidity and said in a deep voice, "Such an elegant and simple white dress, especially with tassels and cloud patterns, only she is worthy of wearing it. A prostitute like you actually imitating an otherworldly fairy is really dirty to Benshuai's eyes." Guanji suddenly realized that Ji Tianqing was angry because of this. The she he spoke of was definitely his most beloved woman. Thinking of this, Guanji suddenly felt wronged and wanted to cry. After all, Ji Tianqing had called her a prostitute in front of her face and looked down on her so much. It was really too hurtful. But she didn't dare show the slightest dissatisfaction. She could only hold back her tears and bow. "General Ji, please calm your anger. This lowly concubine has offended you. This lowly concubine will go change her clothes." Finished speaking, she bowed and left the study. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to look at her. He didn't even touch the spirit tea and spirit fruit on the table. Instead, he turned around and entered the secret room to make charms. However, after Guanji left the study, her expression quickly changed. A moment ago, she was teary-eyed and pitiful. The next moment, she returned to normal. Her tears disappeared and a sneer appeared in the depths of her eyes. "Ha ha ha, so it's not that you don't like women, nor do you like men. You already have someone in your heart. Humph. The cold and emotionless Kenshin of the past actually has a sweetheart now. How ridiculous." As this thought flashed through Guanji's mind, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a contemptuous sneer. The day passed quickly. The news that Ji Tianqing was going to lead the army to battle spread throughout Starfall Valley. The 6 generals chosen by him became the object of envy of all the other generals. Everyone knew that these fellows were following the invincible General Ji and would soon achieve great achievements, be promoted, and become famous all over the world. They didn't dare to do anything, but they received General Ji's favor and support. It was simply like smoke rising from their ancestors' graves. The 600,000 elite soldiers under the command of the 6 generals were also envied by the other soldiers. For a time, the atmosphere in Starfall Valley was lively as countless people were talking about this matter. Everyone was waiting with bated breath, waiting to see Ji Tianqing lead his troops into battle and create another glorious battle record. Late at night. The sky was dark as ink, without the slightest starlight. Outside Starfall Valley, an army of 600,000 had gathered, arranged in 6 formations, looking mighty and majestic. Every soldier's face was full of ambition and a strong fighting spirit exuded from their bodies. Chapter 21:19. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky, looking towards the north in silence. The 6 generals rushed to his side one after another and stood respectfully behind him. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Shi Qingshan's troops have finished their preparations and are awaiting your orders. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Yun Hang's troops have finished their preparations and are ready to set out at any time. Marshal Ji, Jian Fei Yang's troops, the 6 generals reported the military situation one by one, indicating that they were ready to set out. Ji Tianqing nodded lightly and was about to wave his hand to give an order. At that moment, Du Qingchang led more than a dozen generals and flew over from the night sky. When he arrived, Du Qingchang cupped his fists towards Ji Tianqing and asked with a concerned expression, "Marshal Ji, although this old man is old, he is still a hot-blooded man. Now that Marshal Ji is going to set out, this old man is also willing to follow Marshal Ji to the battlefield and experience Marshal Ji's demeanor and might." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and cupped his fists. "Marshal Du, you stay in Falling Star Valley, lest our nest be destroyed by the demon race. In addition, you must send out all the scouts to roam around the 2 demon race camps. Be sure to maintain your deterrence. At the same time, you must mobilize an army of 500,000 and be ready to reinforce us at any time, or block the demon race's reinforcements." Du Qingchang listened carefully and nodded repeatedly. "Marshal Ji, please rest assured, these are all necessary preparations, this old man is well aware of them. This old man congratulates Marshal Ji for achieving victory and creating more glory. This old man will prepare a celebratory feast in the Marshal's palace and await Marshal Ji's triumphant return." Ji Tianqing nodded and waved his hand to the 6 generals. All troops, set out. Soon after, the 600,000-strong army set out. Everyone rushed through the mountain range, leaving behind muffled rumbling sounds and billowing clouds of dust, quickly disappearing into the night. Du Qingchang and the generals stood in the night sky for a long time before turning around and returning to the valley. At the same time, in a secret room deep in the marshal's palace, Guanji took out a communication jade slip with a solemn expression and quietly sent it out. The 6 generals followed Ji Tianqing through the night sky. They flew for over 10,000 miles, but they still didn't know the target of their attack. Finally, Shi Qingshan couldn't hold back his doubts and asked, "General Ji, we've already flown north for over 10,000 li. The area within 5,000 kilometers was occupied by the demon race. Not only were there large camps, but there were also strongholds. Where are we going to attack tonight?" The other generals didn't say anything, but they also looked at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes. Chapter 21:20. There must be something fishy going on. The abnormality in the commander's palace made Ji Tianqing realize that there might be an ambush here. But on second thought, that shouldn't be the case. Although he had announced in the day that he was going to lead the army out tonight. But he didn't reveal where exactly they were going to attack. He only announced the answer when the army was about to reach Fish Dragon Mountain. It was impossible for the news to be leaked. Moreover, he had used his divine perception to check the commander's palace and didn't find any powerful traps or ambushes. There were only many defensive arrays and secret passages. It was very normal. Since there's no ambush, why is the commander's palace so empty? It's fine if the demon generals don't live here, but why are there so few guards? Ji Tianqing was puzzled and felt that something was wrong. So, he quietly entered the commander's palace and approached a few guards. These guards were guarding a secret passage. The ground and walls were made of black stone, and they had set up an array that could isolate sound and divine senses. The passage meandered downwards and seemed to lead to the underground of the commander's palace. It was so dark that nothing could be seen. When Ji Tianqing came to their side, they didn't notice and were still whispering to each other. Have the offerings been sent in? General Wuxia has sent in more than 80,000 blood, qi, and essence souls. General Wuxia brought 4 blood monarchs and infiltrated the Scarlet Sun Empire. They massacred an entire city and only managed to gather 80,000 blood and essence souls. Yes, only martial artists of origin core realm and above have blood, qi, and essence souls that can be used by Lord Devil Saint. Shut up, have you forgotten the commander's orders? Don't talk about this anymore. Stop talking, General Wuxia and the 4 blood monarchs are about to come out. If he hears your discussion, be careful of your heads. The guards discussed for a while and then quickly shut their mouths. Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, offerings. 80,000 blood, qi, and essence souls. For Devil Saint. Could it be Devil Saint Songyu? He was heavily injured by me and urgently needs large amounts of blood, qi, and essence souls to heal his injuries. Who would have thought that after he fled back to the Crimson Sun Empire, he would not guard the Heavenly Wolf Pass but instead hide on the Ichthyosaur Mountain? What a surprise! If he's really hiding here, then I've hit the jackpot. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile, his eyes filled with anticipation. He quietly passed through the dark tunnel and walked towards the depths of the tunnel. 300 meters later, there was a corner in front of him, which was also guarded by 4 guards. Just as he was about to turn the corner, he saw a tall and mighty demon general in black armor walking over with heavy steps. This demon general's eyes were very sharp, and his body exuded a terrifying murderous aura. His strength had also reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that this person was definitely a fierce general under Devil Sage Songyu's command. He was also the General Wuxia that the guards spoke of. Sure enough, when the 4 bodyguards saw General Wuxia walking over, they hurriedly knelt on one knee and saluted. If it were any other day, Ji Tianqing would have killed General Wuxia without hesitation. However, the current situation was special and related to Devil Sage Songyu. He suppressed his murderous aura and hid in the corner to wait. Only when General Wuxia was far away did he continue along the tunnel. Another 300 meters later, a tall stone door appeared at the end of the tunnel. The black stone door was engraved with the image of a demon god and set up a saint-level defensive array. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered to himself, once I break this array, I'll leak my magic power aura and alert the guards in the tunnel. Forget it, time is of the essence. I can't care so much. He made up his mind and used the God's Eye mystic technique to observe the array on the stone door. In just a few moments, he saw through this saint-level array and found a way to break it. Then, he formed a seal with both hands and began to cast a spell. He shot out a pure white light and injected it into the stone door. The saint-level demon array on the stone door was immediately corroded by the white light and quickly dissipated. However, at the same time, the white light and magic power aura that appeared out of nowhere also alerted the guards in the tunnel. Something's wrong. Go and see what's going on. It's magic power aura. It's a human. Human powerhouses are invading. Someone come quickly. The originally quiet tunnel was immediately filled with exclamations and shouts. 8 guards holding swords and sabers rushed over with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing ignored them and slammed his palms on the stone door. With a loud bang, the black stone door, which was about 300 meters tall, shattered into pieces on the spot. Countless gravel splashed out and was wrapped in a violent airwave that swept through the entire tunnel. The 8 guards had just rushed over when they were blown away by the airwave. Ji Tianqing didn't even spare them a glance. With a flash, he passed through the shattered stone door and entered a spacious hall. This vast hall was the first underground floor of the Commander-in-Chief's palace. It was called the Underground Palace for short. The hall was about 300 meters in radius. It was very dark and the air was filled with a dark red mist. The floor and walls were made of huge black stones. They were engraved with images of demon gods and asuras. They were ferocious and terrifying. And in the middle of the hall, there was a 30-meter-tall sacrificial altar. The altar was made of blood crystals. It was dark red in color, with many purple and green gems interspersed within. At the bottom of the sacrificial altar was a blood pool with a radius of 100 meters. Dark red blood water surged and rose from it. Around the sacrificial altar were 9 stone pillars carved with ancient demon beasts. They were vaguely arranged in a mysterious array. Ji Tianqing only took 2 glances before he frowned and sneered. Soul-sealing blood-fusing array. It's actually an ancient mystic technique that was lost 1,000 years ago. It's a top ultimate technique of the blood demon sect. It looks like this is another ultimate technique passed down by the ancestor Fiend Celestial. The soul-sealing blood-fusing array was a healing mystic technique unique to the blood demon sect. No matter how badly injured a demon powerhouse was, as long as their physical body was not destroyed, they could use the sacrificial altar and mystic technique to absorb the blood and essence of billions of living beings to recover from their injuries at the fastest speed. When Ji Tianqing saw this array, he was certain that demon sage Sangyo was definitely here. As expected. When he raised his head to look at the top of the sacrificial altar, he indeed saw a black figure sitting cross-legged in a ball of blood light. That was a middle-aged demon male in black robes. His body was thin and lean, and his appearance was like a demon wolf. He had strong arms and sharp claws. There was a huge triangular eye on his chest. There was even a pair of wings and a large tail on his back. It was Demon Sage Sangyo. At this very moment, he was wrapped in dark red blood light. His eyes were closed and he was immersed in cultivation. His figure was hazy and illusory. His aura was also fluctuating. Clearly, his injuries had not fully recovered. Chapter 21-21. Before entering the main camp of the MO, Ji Tianqing had not thought that Song Yu would be hiding here. After all, everyone thought that Song Yu was guarding the main camp of the MO outside Celestial Wolf Pass. The so-called pleasant surprise was only for Ji Tianqing. He had been preparing to find Song Yu when Song Yu was in the commander's palace. Song Yu was startled awake by his voice. He immediately ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. His gaze passed through the dark red mist and stared straight at Ji Tianqing. His expression immediately changed. "It's you, Ji Tianqing." Song Yu frowned fiercely. His purple eyes flashed viciously as his body gave off strong anger and murderous intent. He clearly had not expected that Ji Tianqing would come to Fish Dragon Mountain and infiltrate the underground palace of the commander's palace. This seat was not outside Celestial Wolf Pass and purposely hid in the underground palace of Fish Dragon Mountain. "I also concealed the news. How did you find this place? Speak. Did some bastard leak the news?" He glared angrily at Ji Tianqing and asked in a dark tone. When his whereabouts were exposed, his first reaction was that someone had leaked the news. That was why he was so furious. Ji Tianqing followed his words and sneered. "Of course. If your subordinate had not leaked the news, how could I have found this place?" Song Yu became even angrier. He shouted with a vicious expression, "Which traitor betrayed deceit?" Ji Tianqing showed an amused smile and sneered. "Forgive me for not being able to tell you. Guess yourself." Song Yu was so angry he wanted to spit blood. His gaze constantly changed as he thought of who could have leaked the news. At this time, 8 disheveled guards passed through the shattered stone door and charged into the underground palace. "Kill him. Take him down. We cannot let him disturb Lord Mo Xing's cultivation." The guards shouted and swung their swords and sabers as they charged at Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. In an instant, saber light, sword shadows, and scarlet blood light swept towards Ji Tianqing like a gale. Ji Tianqing didn't move at all. He didn't even turn around to look. He casually waved his hand and slapped behind him with the back of his hand. Boom! With a muffled explosion, the huge golden palm shattered everyone's attack. Furthermore, the 8 guards were also struck by the golden palm, and they spat out mouthfuls of blood as they flew backward. Everyone fell to the ground in a mess. After landing on the ground, they did not move at all. They died on the spot. After killing 8 guards in one move, Ji Tianqing wielded the sword of burial of heaven. He looked at Song Yu with murderous intent and shouted coldly, "Song Yu, your time has come." Song Yu's expression was ugly, and his heart was filled with fear and worry. Nevertheless, he remained calm and collected, sitting steadily on the altar and yelling coldly, "Ji Tianqing, so what if you can find this place? Don't tell me you think that I didn't make the necessary preparations just because I was hiding here to heal my injuries. I originally planned to settle the score with you after I recovered from my injuries. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then how can I let you down? Tonight, this place will be your burial ground." Song Yu's voice was low, and his tone was powerful. It was filled with confidence and dominance. Ji Tianqing could not help but frown. A thought popped into his mind. The demon race has always been sinister and cunning. Did Song Yu really set up an ambush here? At that moment, Song Yu's expression changed. His figure became illusory and blurry as he teleported out of the underground palace. Swoosh! The moment his figure disappeared, the 9 stone pillars around the altar suddenly released destructive blood-colored light beams that blasted toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing instantly understood that Song Yu was bluffing. He had already planned to escape. He was about to be hit by the 9 blood-colored light beams. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to use the armillary sphere secret technique, and his figure disappeared into the darkness. Boom, 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 boom. The 9 blood-colored pillars of light slammed into the black stone-paved ground with a deafening boom. The ground was smashed into smithereens. More than half of the commander-in-chief's palace collapsed, and countless rocks and bricks fell. The underground palace was in chaos. Even the altar was destroyed by the shockwave, and cracks appeared all over it. Ji Tianqing had already merged with the world. He transferred the power of the 9 blood-colored light beams to the ground within 1,000 miles. The entire Dragon Fish Mountain and the surrounding hundreds of miles of ground shook violently, producing muffled rumbling sounds. Ji Tianqing was unharmed. He did not linger for a moment. He hurriedly teleported out of the underground palace and arrived above Dragon Fish Mountain. Under the pitch-black night sky, a faint black light was speeding toward the north. The black light was extremely fast, and its aura was also very powerful. It far surpassed ordinary demon generals and demon lords. Ji Tianqing naturally knew that it was Song Yu, who was fleeing for his life. A cold murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He hurriedly teleported and gave chase. Swish, swish, swish. In just 3 short breaths, he had teleported more than 50 miles and blocked Song Yu's path. Heaven-cleaving sword. He roared with murderous intent. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he slashed out a 100-meter-long golden sword at Song Yu. Song Yu was forced to stop. He sent out a dozen black shadow claws to block the attack of the giant sword. Bam, bam, bam. The claws clashed with the giant sword, producing a series of muffled sounds that reverberated in the night sky. The claws were all shattered, but the giant sword's power did not decrease at all. It slashed at Song Yu. Song Yu was sent flying back, and he let out a pained grunt. Fortunately, he had recovered 70% of his strength. He was still a demon saint that could not be underestimated. This sword strike only left a trace of blood on his body, causing him to suffer a light injury. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky, holding the sword of burial of heaven. He looked at Song Yu with a cold smile and said in a contemptuous tone, "As a demon saint and commander-in-chief, you abandoned your million-strong demon army and fled for your life. Song Yu, you've completely disgraced the demon saint. If this matter gets back to North Underworld Mountain, how will you have the face to see others?" Song Yu knew that he could not escape Ji Tianqing's pursuit, so he simply stopped in the night sky. Black light flashed in his hands, and a pitch-black halberd appeared. He pointed it at Ji Tianqing. "Ji Tianqing, you bastard, you've gone too far. You took advantage of my injury to launch a sneak attack. You're despicable and shameless." Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully. "What morality is there to deal with you demons? What a joke. Cut the crap. I'll send you on your way now." As he spoke, he sent out 1,000-meter-long dragon shadow with his left palm. He waved the sword in his right hand, sending out starlight toward Song Yu. Song Yu gripped the halberd with a serious expression. His body ignited with ice-blue flames, and he also sent out spear shadows to fight with Ji Tianqing. The light from the spells cast by both sides instantly dispelled the darkness in the night sky, illuminating a radius of hundreds of miles. Bang 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 bang. Chapter 21-22. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing and Song Yu had exchanged a few blows. The earth-shattering sounds of battle alerted the entire Dragonfish Mountain, as well as the millions of demon soldiers. Soon, several demon generals led hundreds of demon experts and charged at Ji Tianqing. 6 blood god illusions also turned into black mist and bloody light, quietly approaching him and waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. On the peak of Mount Fish Dragon, tens of thousands of soldiers of the scout camp were also on standby, ready to attack at any time. Even the hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the army camp at the foot of the mountain quickly readied themselves and were on high alert. Countless demon soldiers looked up at the night sky, paying close attention to the battle between Ji Tianqing and Song Yu. Only a few demon generals knew that Song Yu was hiding on Mount Fish Dragon. The millions of demon soldiers did not know. They were filled with doubts and whispered to each other. General Wuxia and 5 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon generals led hundreds of elite experts to attack Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had just exchanged a blow with Song Yu and was about to use his sword technique to attack Song Yu again. At this moment, General Wuxia and the 5 demon generals seized the opportunity and immediately attacked him from all sides. Demonic Dance. Sky-shattering slash. Sky-shattering blood wave. Netherghost soul-slaying sword. With furious roars, the 6 experts brandished their swords and sabers in unison, releasing bloody light, black mist, and phantoms that blotted out the sky. Ji Tianqing's figure was about to be drowned out by the bloody light. At the critical moment, he used his ultimate technique with multitasking. His left palm struck out with 5-colored lightning while his right hand sent out starry sword light. Bang 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 bang. 64 rays of starry sword light slashed the bloody light and the phantoms of ghosts in the sky. Immediately after, the 5-colored divine lightning that blotted out the sky came crashing down and struck the demon generals. Kaboom! Only the sound of thunder exploding could be heard, shaking the heavens. A huge ball of 5-colored light exploded, rising into the night sky like a mushroom cloud. The 6 demon generals were sent flying by the explosion. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their faces were also covered in blood. Among them, 2 of the weaker demon generals were struck by the heavenly lightning and turned into charcoal on the spot. Their bodies were completely destroyed. Before their corpses fell to the ground, their souls left their bodies and flew toward the fish-dragon mountain. The other 4 demon generals were also seriously injured. They constantly let out low growls and roars of pain. Only General Wuxia was the strongest. Even if he was seriously injured, he could still hold on. He lowered his head to look at his badly mutilated chest and abdomen. Ignoring his own injuries, he once again wielded his sword and charged towards Ji Tianqing. At the same time, Ji Tianqing exchanged another move with Zhang Yu and repelled him by 15 kilometers. When General Wuxia arrived behind him and the saber light was about to hit him, he turned his hand and pointed his finger. Heaven-piercing finger. He put his index and middle fingers together like a sword, shooting out a dazzling golden light that flashed in the night sky. Crack! With a loud and clear sound, General Wuxia's saber light was penetrated by the golden light and shattered. Immediately after, the golden light pierced through his forehead and accurately hit his divine soul. The dark purple soul was torn apart on the spot. General Wuxia was killed in an instant. His body was carried by the force of the impact and flew more than 10 miles away before falling down to the wilderness below. After Ji Tianqing killed General Wuxia in one move, he charged towards the other demon generals without hesitation. Sword thrust. As the Heaven Burier sword stabbed forward, a cold light suddenly appeared and flickered in the night sky. In the next moment, a dazzling brilliance exploded in the head of a demon general. That round head of his exploded into a rain of blood on the spot, and his soul also collapsed and shattered. Ji Tianqing waved the burial of heaven again and again, stabbing out a few times as fast as lightning. Cold sword glints tore through the night sky, striking those demon generals who were fleeing in panic. Including the 2 demon generals whose bodies had been destroyed and only had their souls left, they were shattered on the spot by the sword light. Just like that, 6 elite demon generals were killed by Ji Tianqing in less than 2 breaths. Zhang Yu had just rushed over and wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Seeing the 6 demon generals being blasted to smithereens with his own eyes, he was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. His body ignited with bloody flames that soared into the sky. Ji Tianqing. Even if I die here, I will tear you to pieces. As he roared, he waved his black halberd with all his might. In an instant, he stabbed out hundreds of bloody and black light spear blades that enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing could only wave his sword to block and defeat the bloody light and spear blades that filled the sky. However, just as he resolved Zhang Yu's attack, a cold aura of death suddenly attacked from behind. The 2 blood gods' clones turned into bloody swords that were 10 feet long and stabbed at the back of Su Mo's head and neck. The 2 blood gods' clones had been lurking nearby for a long time before they seized this rare opportunity. In order to kill Su Mo in one hit, they had personally formed the bloody swords to explode with the most powerful attack. Ji Tianqing could not block or dodge in time and was about to be stabbed by the 2 bloody swords. At this critical moment, his spiritual soul was condensed to the extreme and his spiritual power was also unleashed to the extreme. He entered a state of extreme focus and gave it his all. At that moment, he could clearly feel that the martial arts bottleneck had begun to loosen. He had already shown signs of breaking through to the martial sage realm. Celestial Dragon Body. Without hesitation, he lifted his head and roared. His body lit up with a golden light that soared into the sky. Roar! The golden light that soared into the sky condensed into a huge golden dragon shadow. It lifted its head and let out a dragon roar that shook the clouds. Its power was shocking. Ji Tianqing's body suddenly expanded and he turned into a 10 feet tall golden armored giant. His muscles bulged and he looked extremely majestic. His body was covered with golden dragon scales and he exuded a violent and overbearing aura. He was like a golden armored war god that had descended. Bam bam. The two blood gods clones that had turned into bloody swords accurately hit Sumo's legs and back. In the deafening sound, the golden light exploded and the bloody swords shattered into pieces, splattering in all directions. Ji Tianqing's body shook violently and he was thrown 1,000 feet away by the terrifying impact. However, other than that, he did not suffer any substantial injuries. The dragon scales on his legs and back were still intact and there was not even a drop of blood. There were only 2 shallow scratches. The powerful defense of the celestial dragon body was undoubtedly displayed at that moment. On the other hand, the 2 blood gods clones were not only unable to break through Ji Tianqing's defense, but their bodies were also shattered. Fortunately, they were blood gods clones that were almost immortal. Even if they were shattered into pieces, they could quickly be pieced back together. Such a shocking scene caused numerous demon tribe members to turn pale with fright. They were shocked and terrified to the extreme. Even Song Yu's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with intense shock and disbelief. How can this be? The full force attack of the 2 blood gods did not even break through his defense. Chapter 21-23. After using the celestial dragon tyrant body, Ji Tianqing's defense and strength reached the peak. He was like an invincible god of war, shuttling through the sky, invincible. Hundreds of demon clan experts formed a battle formation and jointly released a destructive blood dragon and light blade storm. However, he rushed over arrogantly, waving his huge fists and punching out dozens of mountain-sized fist shadows. Bang! 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 A burst of brilliance flashed and a loud noise shook the sky. All of the attacks collapsed and turned into violent shockwaves that spread out in all directions. Ji Tianqing passed through the light fragments unscathed and rushed to the front of the hundreds of demon clan experts. Die! He let out a low growl in a sinister tone. His palms repeatedly shot out divine star fire, which blasted into the battle formation. Another series of explosions rang out, and the hundreds of demon race experts were smashed to pieces on the spot. They turned into pieces of flesh and blood that rained down from the sky. Not a single person had survived. Such a terrifying scene made every demon clan expert feel a chill down their spines. However, Ji Tianqing was in the mood to kill. His figure flashed through the bloody rain and rushed to the front of a group of demon clan experts. Star-shattering fist. He instantly punched out dozens of silver fist lights and killed dozens of demon clan experts. No one could block his move. As long as they were hit, they would die without a doubt. His figure kept flashing in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he killed hundreds of demon clan experts. Song Yu finally came to his senses and rushed up in rage. Ji Tianqing, don't be so arrogant. He roared and waved the black demon war halberd with all his strength, thrusting out spear blades that filled the sky and creating a shocking storm. This time, he made up his mind. Even if he had to endure his injuries, he would attack Ji Tianqing with all his strength and not give him a chance to breathe. Anyway, this was Mount Fish Dragon, and there were millions of troops here. As long as he delayed Ji Tianqing, the soldiers would activate the formation and join forces to form a joint attack formation to help him deal with Ji Tianqing. I don't believe that I can't kill you with the power of millions of soldiers and me. In this world, apart from the martial god, there is absolutely no one who can stop him. If it had been anyone else, even if they were a rank 8 or 9 martial sage, they would not have been able to withstand it. However, Ji Tianqing was an anomaly, an evildoer and a monster. He could not be judged by common sense. Song Yu's plans and ideas were destined to fail. 7-star sword. Broken moon sword. Sun-shattering sword. Heavenly dragon world slash. Ji Tianqing constantly executed his ultimate skills and secret techniques, attacking Song Yu madly, beating him back repeatedly. Not far away, 8 Tribulation Realm demon generals and the Blood God Sun led more than 300 demon clan masters to form the 6 Saint Demon Battle Formation. They joined forces to release an earth-shattering spell attack, which poured down on Ji Tianqing like a flood. Further away in the night sky, there were more than 10,000 warriors from the scout camp. They used Dharma treasure bows and charms to release a rain of arrows, which covered the sky and the sun. They continuously attacked Ji Tianqing. No one expected to kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. They only hoped to restrain him and injure him to create an opportunity for Zhang Yu. Ji Tianqing suddenly felt the pressure on him increase. He was like a small boat in a stormy sea that could capsize at any time and be drowned by the sea. The crisis of life and death forced his spiritual soul, willpower, and mind to the extreme. The vast dermic powers in his body were also activated to the extreme. Even the 360 meridians in his body and the 108,000 pores were activated, rapidly absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the power of the stars. This kind of profound state was precisely the limit that martial artists yearned for even in their dreams. If he wanted to advance to the martial sage realm, he had to break through his own limits. 10 breaths, 30 breaths, 50 breaths, very quickly, 100 breaths passed. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the barrier and bottleneck of the martial sage realm was gradually disappearing with the passage of time. On the surface, he was surrounded by danger and his life was hanging by a thread. He could die at any time. However, in reality, he was laughing heartily in his heart. He was very satisfied and looked forward to it. Ha ha ha, just as I expected, I am facing off against Zhang Yu and the many demon tribesmen alone. I can only unleash all my potential at the moment of life and death. Zhang Yu, this is indeed the opportunity for me to break through to the martial sage realm. Hold on for a while longer and I will be able to break through soon. This thought flashed across his mind. He gave it his all and unleashed his potential at all costs in order to reach the limit. The pressure on Zhang Yu instantly increased and he retreated pathetically. Countless wounds appeared on his body and demon blood spurted out. The surrounding demon generals and hundreds of experts also felt the pressure increase. Everyone gritted their teeth and unleashed their strongest power, attacking Ji Tianqing with all their might. Such an intense battle caused chaos within a 100-mile radius. The dazzling radiance of dermic powers lit up the entire Dragon-Fish Mountain, making it as bright as day for 100 miles. In the demon army camp at the foot of the mountain, hundreds of thousands of people looked up at the night sky in a daze. The 600,000 human tribesmen who were lying in ambush around the camp felt their hearts in their throats as they broke out in cold sweat for Ji Tianqing. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianqing maintained his peak state for a quarter of an hour. His mind and soul felt deeply fatigued and exhausted. His consciousness also showed a brief moment of dizziness. However, Zhang Yu's situation was even worse. Zhang Yu had already been hit by more than 30 blows. His chest alone had been hit 8 times. It was a bloody mess and demon blood kept flowing out. His injuries were too severe and he could not take it anymore. He could only use his trump card again. 9 Nether Demon Wolf Transformation. He roared to the sky in grief and indignation as his body burned with a bloody flame. In the next moment, his body turned into a cloud of black mist and scattered in the night sky. A pitch-black demon wolf that was thousands of feet long and as huge as a mountain appeared. Every time Zhang Yu used the 9 Nether Demon Wolf transformation, he would burn his blood soul and sacrifice 100 years of cultivation, causing his strength to drop greatly. He had only used it once before and had not been able to kill Ji Tianqing. Instead, he had been severely injured and had fled. Now that he had not recovered from his injuries, he would definitely suffer an even more terrifying backlash if he forcefully used this technique again. Even the foundation of his Devil Dao could very well be destroyed because of this. By then, even if he could kill Ji Tianqing, he would be reduced to a useless demon saint and would never be able to become stronger again. That was why he was so indignant. However, Zhang Yu did not expect that just as he was filled with despair and used the 9 nether demon wolf transformation, Ji Tianqing would also change. He also stopped attacking and actually raised his head to look at the sky. He opened his wide arms and shouted in a voice that was as loud as a bell. "Break!" This cold shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding in the night sky and spreading over a radius of 800 miles, causing the entire dragon-fish mountain to tremble. In the next instant, infinite golden light surged out of his body and formed a pillar of light that shot into the sky. It burned with a golden flame that covered the sky. Chapter 21-24. The sudden change shocked everyone. Ji Tianqing, who was 30 meters tall and looked like a god of war in golden armor, opened his arms to embrace the sky and welcomed the holy aura. The golden light behind him soared into the sky, and the golden light in the sky shone brightly. It condensed into 9 incomparably huge divine dragons, and they roared with their heads held high. Dazzling 5-colored rays of light appeared and covered the sky, extending to the end of the horizon. Such an earth-shattering scene could be seen clearly from a million miles away. Even the living beings in the Luoshui divine kingdom, which spanned hundreds of millions of miles, could see it. This was definitely not a martial artist's technique but a heaven and earth vision. Only the mighty power of heaven and earth could produce such a shocking scene. Zhang Yu, who had transformed into the 9 nether demon wolf, stared at Ji Tianqing with his 3 eyes and was stunned. He was stunned for a moment before he realized what had happened and roared. You actually broke through. This heaven and earth vision only appears when one breaks through to the martial sage realm. No. Didn't you reach the martial sage realm long ago? How could you? How could you only break through to the martial sage realm now? Zhang Yu was completely dumbfounded. He was so shocked that his body stiffened and his mind went blank. He had always thought that Ji Tianqing was a martial sage and was one of the best among the martial sages. Otherwise, how could Ji Tianqing possibly defeat him and beat him up so miserably? However, the heaven and earth vision in front of him was very real and the heaven way would not be wrong. He then realized that Ji Tianqing had not broken through to the martial sage realm. However, how could Ji Tianqing, who was at the 9th stage of the tribulation stage, defeat him, a 7th stage demon sage? This was simply the most ridiculous thing in the world. Zhang Yu refused to believe it and could not accept this outcome. A few demon generals, hundreds of demon clan experts, and millions of demon clan soldiers were all stunned. All the demon clan soldiers on Dragon Fish Mountain were petrified. They stared blankly at the sky and were mesmerized by the dazzling heaven and earth vision. Not only that, the 600,000 human clan soldiers who were lying in ambush outside the demon clan camp were also in an uproar. In the beginning, many people did not know what the heaven and earth vision represented. However, the 6 generals were very clear that it was the heaven and earth vision when one broke through to the martial sage realm. After they exclaimed, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers spread the news and they finally understood the truth. It turned out that Martial Ji, who they admired and was invincible martial sage realm, had just broken through to the martial sage realm. This news was like a bolt out of the blue and earth vision and heaven and earth. After a long while, the generals came back to their senses. Heaven and earth of the heaven and earth of the heaven and earth vision of the heavens. This is unbelievable. Marshal of the heavens of the tribulation heavens. But General Ji killed millions of devil soldiers and several devil saints. How did he do it? There's absolutely no reasonable explanation other than the existence of a deity. Heaven heaven. Heaven heaven and heaven earth earth. Heaven. Of heaven heaven. Earth heaven heaven of the heaven. This means that Martial Ji is able to attract 9 heavenly thunders every time he transcends a tribulation. He is a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Heaven. When other martial sages break through to the heaven and earth vision, there would only be 6 or 7 spiritual beasts or stars. There would not be any divine beasts. Now that Ji Shui has broken through to the martial sage realm, there are 9 divine dragons. Divine dragons are the noblest divine beasts in the world. This means that martial of heaven and earth's talent and future are beyond imagination. Ha ha ha. The heaven and earth vision of Ji Shui breaking through to the martial sage realm is comparable to that of the 3 great divine masters breaking through to the martial god realm. I bet that half of the people in the mainland will know about this by tomorrow morning. Just as the people were discussing, the light pillar in the night sky slowly retreated back into Ji Tianqing's body. The divine aura that descended from the heavens was also stored in his body, refined and absorbed by him. His body and spiritual soul had been baptized by the heaven and earth's divine force and had been completely reborn. From today onwards, he had surpassed the limits of a mortal and a martial artist. He had 1 foot in the door of the divine path. In terms of martial arts, he was already at the pinnacle, reaching the pinnacle. Next, he would cultivate the divine path. It was a superpower that could control everything in the universe. This was a whole new realm. If it were anyone else, breaking through to the martial sage realm would mean stepping into a new realm. There would be many discomfort and confusion. They would need some time to adapt and stabilize their martial way foundation. However, for Ji Tianqing, the most familiar feeling once again filled his body. All the 5 elements and heaven and earth forces within a 10,000-mile radius were under his command and control. Even the starlight in the heavens would sprinkle down formless star forces and naturally enter his body. He slowly opened his eyes, and a dazzling light flashed in his deep, dark eyes. A sacred and majestic aura exploded from his body and spread out for a 1,000-mile radius. Martial Sage Realm, I am back. He looked up at the starry sky and muttered with a complicated expression. Not far away, Zhang Yu and the many demon clan experts revealed strange expressions. Everyone could clearly feel that after Ji Tianqing had broken through to the martial sage realm, he seemed to have changed into a different person. His aura was sacred and majestic, cold and dignified. He was like a divine spirit that looked down on all living beings. It was as if he had become one with the heavens and earth. There was no aura at all and no one could detect his background. However, he was omnipresent. If one looked at him with their naked eyes, they would be able to see him. However, if one closed their eyes and used their spiritual senses to detect him, they would not be able to detect him. He was clearly just one person. However, when one looked at him, it was as if they were looking at mountains and rivers. That strange and mysterious feeling could not be described with words. Zhang Yu's expression changed. Deep fear and dread surged in his eyes and he faintly felt like retreating. However, the surrounding demon generals and demon clan experts did not know how powerful he was. They were not knowledgeable and did not know what Ji Tianqing's transformation meant. The supreme being who had once ruled over the 9 heavens had returned. Although he had only returned to the martial sage realm, he had already surpassed the ordinary and stepped into the divine path. This meant that he could finally use all his superpowers and use the essence of the Kenshin way. What are you all waiting for? Quickly kill him. That's right. He has just broken through and his realm is not stable yet. Now is the best time. 2 angry shouts came from the crowd. 2 demon generals could not wait any longer and waved their swords and sabers as they charged toward Ji Tianqing. The remaining demon generals, Blood God Sun, and the hundreds of demon clan experts all seemed to have awakened from a dream. They all executed a secret combination attack and besieged Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, who had been looking up at the sky, suddenly turned his head to look at the crowd. A cold light flashed in his cold eyes. You are courting death. That cold and indifferent gaze was like a divine spirit looking down on ants. Chapter 21-25 With a wave of his sleeve, the starlight that blotted out the sky swept over. Whoosh! The next moment, several demon generals, blood god sons, and more than 200 demon race experts were all drowned in the dazzling starlight. The night sky was dazzling and dazzling. It was like a bright moon had fallen to the earth, illuminating thousands of miles around. The silver starlight flashed and quickly dissipated. The night sky returned to darkness, but the demon generals, blood god sons, and demon race experts had all disappeared. No one knew where they had gone or whether they were alive or dead. Only the stronger demons noticed that the night sky was filled with black ash that dissipated with the wind. Without a doubt, those demon generals, blood god sons, and elite experts had all been turned to dust. Ji Tianqing had only casually waved his sleeve and killed hundreds of experts and experts. Such powerful strength and miraculous means made everyone present dumbfounded. Zhang Yu's expression changed dramatically, and his eyes were filled with shock and fear. Previously, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart, but now, even his last hope of victory had been extinguished. He had to accept reality. Not only was he no match for Ji Tianqing, but even with the addition of 1 million demon race soldiers, it was impossible for them to kill Ji Tianqing. This person was already invincible, like a god. Thinking of this, Zhang Yu shouted hoarsely and murderously, "Everyone, listen to my order. Kill Ji Tianqing at all costs. Warriors of my race, even if we bleed to the last drop of blood, we can't let him leave alive." Zhang Yu's voice was sonorous and forceful, full of iron and blood. Countless demon race soldiers, whose morale had been completely depleted, were stimulated at this moment. They all let out deafening roars and battle cries as they charged toward Ji Tianqing in the night sky. Kill. Be loyal to the ancestor until death. Everyone, let's go together. Even if we are smashed to pieces, let his blood run dry and his soul wither. No one is allowed to take a step back. Even if we die, we can't disgrace our race. At least 100,000 demon race soldiers surged out of Fish Dragon Mountain. Like a pitch-black tide, they swept toward Ji Tianqing. After Zhang Yu gave the order, he quietly concealed himself and flew north without a sound. Half a month ago, Northern Underworld Mountain had sent news. The ancestor demon god had learned of the situation in the north and intended for the demon race army to retreat to Northern Underworld Mountain. Back then, Zhang Yu had not received the exact order, so he could not withdraw his troops on his own. He could only hide in Fish Dragon Mountain to heal his wounds. But now, he could no longer care so much. He would rather sacrifice the million-strong army of the Fish Dragon Mountain to stall Ji Tianqing and create a chance for him to escape. However, Zhang Yu underestimated Ji Tianqing in the end. Zhang Yu of the demon race's demon race. As such, when the 100,000 devilish soldiers charged toward him, he made a hand seal with both hands and let loose a low cry with a cold expression. As his voice fell, the night sky that was as dark as ink suddenly became deathly still, as if a mirror had been frozen. The space within a radius of 1,000 kilometers seemed to have been sealed in ice. The movements of the 100,000 demon race soldiers became extremely slow, like they had been slowed down 100 times. Thousands of cracks appeared in the pitch-black night sky. Dazzling starlight shone from within. Swish. 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 In the next moment, over 9,000 huge swords condensed from starlight pierced through the cracks and rained down on the demon race army. This was one of Kenshin's ultimate sword techniques, sword rain. The starlight swords formed from the power of stars in outer space gathered like rain. Such a wondrous technique was the true ultimate technique of Kenshin. As the sword rain rained down, the 100,000 demon race soldiers were immediately enveloped by sword shadows. Body after body was sliced apart by the sword light. They were minced into pieces of flesh and blood that rained down. Screams and howls of rage erupted in the night sky, converging into a terrifying torrent of sound waves that reverberated endlessly. Ji Tianqing was nowhere to be seen. He did not need to look to know that the fate of the 100,000 demon race soldiers was certain death. Whoosh! He took 5 steps as if he was taking a leisurely stroll, and he flew 150 kilometers away as if he had teleported, catching up to Cangyu. Cangyu suddenly sensed danger approaching. His back was icy cold, and the aura of death emerged from the depths of his soul. For the first time in his life, he felt that he was so close to death. Without hesitation, he used a teleportation secret technique. He wanted to teleport 800 kilometers away from Mount Fish Dragon. Whoosh! With a flash of black light, his 1,000-foot-tall demon wolf body became illusory and blurry. He was about to vanish from the spot. He was about to escape from Ji Tianqing's eyes. However, a horrifying scene appeared. Just as Cangyu was about to teleport away, Ji Tianqing suddenly reached out with his right hand and grabbed at him. Bam! A huge dark golden dragon claw instantly grabbed Cangyu and held him firmly. He was about to enter the alternate space when the dark golden dragon claw violently pulled him out. Cangyu was instantly horrified. His 3 eyes opened wide while unparalleled terror surged out from the bottom of his heart. Damn it! What secret technique is this? How can it forcefully interrupt my teleportation? Ji Tianqing, this bastard. Where did he come from? He is definitely not a newly advanced martial sage. Cangyu did not believe that Ji Tianqing had just broken through to the martial sage realm. Such a tyrannical and mysterious technique was definitely not something an ordinary martial sage could perform. Just as this thought flashed through Cangyu's mind, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his body as if it was being torn apart. He then realized that the dark golden dragon claw had suddenly tightened and was ruthlessly crushing him. The 1,000-foot-long body of the demonic wolf was extremely fragile in front of the dark golden dragon claw. Immediately, a cracking sound could be heard as dense cracks appeared on the wolf's body. The heart-wrenching pain caused Cangyu to cry out in pain as he struggled with all his might. Ah ah ah! Ji Tianqing, you bastard! I will tear you apart! Cangyu recklessly exploded with power. His body suddenly shrunk by 10 times before it violently expanded. Bam! There was a muffled sound as the dark golden dragon claw was blown to pieces and turned into numerous golden light fragments that dissipated. Cangyu had finally escaped from Ji Tianqing's grasp. However, his body was covered in blood and he looked extremely miserable. His wings and legs had been crushed and they drooped weakly on his body. Broken demon bones could be seen in his wounds. His body was covered in cracks and wounds and he looked like a broken porcelain bowl. Dark purple demon blood gushed out like a fountain and dyed his body dark purple. Cangyu retreated 20 miles away and glared at Ji Tianqing with hatred. He shouted in a hoarse voice, Ji Tianqing. Stop! I want to negotiate with you. Chapter 21-26. Seeing Ji Tianqing's decisive refusal, Cangyu's heart burned with worry. He said anxiously, Ji Tianqing, I admit that you are very strong, but you are alone. How can you protect all the people of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom? Even if you can kill me, there are still more than 3 million soldiers outside the Fish Dragon Mountain in Sky Wolf Pass. Once I die, they will attack the Luoshui Divine Kingdom without a care. They will slaughter at least a few million people. Moreover, countless blood sovereigns and elite experts will sneak into the Luoshui Divine Kingdom and massacre the city. Even if I die, millions of people will die with me. Cangyu spoke very quickly, and his tone was also very firm, revealing an unquestionable tone. However, if you can spare my life and stop the war, I will immediately order the army to retreat. All the demons on the northern battlefront will retreat to North Underworld Mountain as quickly as possible. Isn't this the result that the Luoshui Divine Kingdom wants? Moreover, the millions of people of the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom won't have to die. Ji Tianqing, this deal is beneficial to you. I hope you can seize the opportunity. After speaking his thoughts, Zhang Yu reminded Ji Tianqing in a serious tone, afraid that he would not consider it seriously. Ji Tianqing glanced at him with a disdainful sneer on his cold face. He said indifferently, at first glance, what you said seems to make sense. Zhang Yu was overjoyed and asked expectantly, so, you agree? No. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said coldly, I refuse. What I want is not only the retreat of the demon army and the resolution of the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom's crisis. I want all the demons who invade the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom to die here and be unable to return to North Underworld Mountain. All the demons, including you, must die. Ji Tianqing's tone was equally domineering and full of confidence. Zhang Yu's body stiffened, and his 3 eyes widened with grief and indignation. Ji Tianqing. You are too arrogant. Do you really think you are a god? You're so overbearing. One day, you'll fall in the hands of my devil race and suffer the pain of being hacked into pieces. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and said in a calm voice, you won't be able to see whether I will fall into the hands of the demon race. After all, you're going to die soon. Moreover, you're going to be smashed into pieces and die without a complete corpse. After he finished speaking, he did not waste any more words with Zhang Yu. His right hand pointed at the sky as he shouted expressionlessly, hidden swords in the void, myriad swords return to origin. As his voice fell, tens of thousands of starlight spots suddenly lit up high in the night sky. Each of the light spots was a giant sword of starlight that was hundreds of meters long. They fell like shooting stars. Swish! Swish! Tens of thousands of stellar swords stabbed down at the same time, firmly locking onto Zhang Yu's aura, making it impossible for him to dodge. Instantly, the night sky within a radius of several thousand miles was illuminated by the silver starlight. Zhang Yu was under great pressure. His body trembled and the wounds all over his body ruptured at an accelerated rate. However, he did his best to hold on and roared in grief and indignation, Ji Tianqing, even if I die, I won't let you have it easy. As he roared, he suddenly opened the third eye on his chest, releasing an endless amount of black light. The extremely pure black light condensed into a pillar of light that was hundreds of meters long. It carried a mysterious and cold power as it blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Zhang Yu had used this secret art before. Ji Tianqing also knew that the black pillar of light was the power of annihilation. However, he was fearless. His expression and eyes did not show any signs of retreating or worry. He raised his hand and punched without hesitation. Star-shattering fist. A golden fist the size of a mountain slammed towards the pillar of annihilation with destructive power. Boom! The two collided with a deafening sound that shook the world for thousands of miles. Ripples appeared in the night sky. The ground trembled violently and fissures appeared. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions along with countless fragments of golden light. The golden fist was shattered, but the pillar of annihilation was also completely destroyed. Zhang Yu's ultimate trump card had been neutralized by Ji Tianqing just like that. He was filled with despair and turned to flee. However, tens of thousands of starlight swords had already arrived. Bam 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 bam. In an instant, hundreds of starlight swords stabbed into his body, creating a series of loud booms. The 3,000-meter-long demon wolf's body was instantly riddled with holes. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The previously ferocious and terrifying demonic wolf's body was immediately reduced to a bloody mess. Zhang Yu screamed in pain and desperately swung his claws to shatter the starlight swords. He also used all his strength to release demonic power and condense a black shield to protect himself. Unfortunately, under the bombardment of tens of thousands of swords, the black shield quickly dissipated. In less than 10 breaths, Tsang Yu's demon wolf body was shattered by the tens of thousands of starlight swords and scattered into the night sky. At the same time, thousands of starlight swords shattered and turned into starlight that scattered into the night sky. Whoosh! A dark purple wolf-shaped divine soul charged out of the rain of blood. Burning with dark red flames, it sped towards the north. Even though Tsang Yu's physical body was destroyed and only his divine soul was left, he still did not give up. However, he still didn't give up on escaping. He used a secret technique at all costs and flashed through the night sky. Ji Tianqing stared coldly at the divine soul. He raised his right hand unhurriedly and formed a few hand seals with his hands. Condense. Following his cold shout, the scattered starlight in the night sky immediately condensed into a giant sword that was thousands of feet long, like a white rainbow. Kill! Ji Tianqing shouted again and pointed at the fleeing Tsang Yu with his right hand. The 1,000-foot-long starlight sword immediately turned into a ray of silver light and began its pursuit. The starlight sword was so fast that it even left behind a dazzling trail of flames. In just 2 short breaths, the starlight sword had crossed 500 kilometers and viciously struck Tsang Yu's divine soul. Bang! With a deafening sound, the wolf-shaped divine soul collapsed on the spot, exploding into dozens of pieces that scattered into the night sky. A martial saint expert, the infamous second demon Saint Tsang Yu, had died just like that. Even Ji Tianqing was rather surprised and could not help but frown. The demon race has always been cunning and treacherous. They will not die so easily. Did Tsang Yu not have a backup plan, such as cultivating the celestial demon jade seed technique or some ultimate life-saving technique? Earlier, he had thought that killing Tsang Yu would take some effort and waste some time. He had not imagined that it would be so easy. He had not even used his trump card. However, on second thought, Tsang Yu had just been heavily injured and had not recovered from his injuries. He only had around 70% of his strength. It was inevitable that he would be killed. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing flew to the place where the divine soul fragments were scattered. He waved his hand and sent out several rays of golden light, picking up the fragments. Then, he used the divine power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the divine soul fragments. Ji Tianqing formed a spell with his right hand, directing the power of the stars and heavenly fire in the 9 heavens to bombard the devil race army. Immediately, hundreds of dazzling meteors, accompanied by crimson heavenly fire, rained down from the sky. Whoosh! Boom! 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 Everything within a 200-mile radius was turned into a sea of fire. The meteors blasted countless holes in the ground, sending smoke and dust into the air. The ruins of the collapsed fish dragon mountain were blasted away on the spot. Another 300,000 devil race soldiers were burned to ashes by the sea of fire, dying without a complete corpse. The devil race army was completely scared out of their wits. Their anger and murderous intent had all dissipated. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky like a deity. Every move he made could unleash a calamity that could destroy the world. How could they continue fighting? If they delayed any longer, Ji Tianqing could probably use a few more moves to destroy everything within a 1,000-mile radius. By then, even 3 or 5 million devil race soldiers would not be enough for him to slaughter, let alone 1 million. This guy was no longer human. He was a god. The most terrifying killing god. Soon, the devil race army began to crumble. They fled toward the north in a panic. The pressure on the human army was greatly reduced. They immediately cheered excitedly and chased after the devil race soldiers. Ji Tianqing saw that the 2 armies were mixed up and it was no longer suitable for him to release powerful moves, so he stopped. After all, only about 400,000 devil race soldiers were left after his massacre, and they were all remnants of defeated soldiers. Leaving the 600,000 human soldiers to chase after the devil race soldiers would definitely result in a complete victory. He stood in the night sky with his hands behind his back, silently watching the battlefield and waiting for the battle to end. After a full 2 hours, the battle finally came to an end. Another 300,000 devil race soldiers were killed by the human army. The entire camp of the devil race was razed to the ground and completely destroyed. Only 80,000 devil race soldiers were left. They scattered into dozens of small groups and fled into the mountains in the north. Ji Tianqing sent out 2 generals, each leading 50,000 soldiers to chase after the devil race soldiers. The remaining human army remained on the battlefield. Not only did they have to clean up the battlefield, but they also had to treat the wounded soldiers. After they were done, they could return to the Starfall Valley. This would take another 2 hours. Ji Tianqing could not be bothered to wait, so he left this matter to the 4 generals. Chapter 21-28. After leaving the battlefield, Ji Tianqing flew in the night sky as he thought about his next plan. The barracks of Mount Fish Dragon had been destroyed and Song Yu had been killed by him. The commander-in-chief of the northern region was dead and there was no demon sage to guard the place. Now, there were only 2 barracks and a few forts outside Fallen Stars Valley and 2 million demon tribe troops. There were still 3 million demon tribe troops in the barracks and forts outside Sirius Pass. As long as he killed the 5 million demon tribe troops, the war in the northern region would be over. Even if there were some remaining demon tribe troops, they would not be able to pose much of a threat. Unknowingly, Ji Tianqing was 2,000 miles away from Mount Fish Dragon. It was the darkest moment of the day, just before dawn. He was flying over a vast mountain range and was still thinking about something. Suddenly, a crisp and pleasant female voice rang in the night sky. "Ho ho, the invincible commander-in-chief Ji has fallen into such a sorry state." The sudden voice interrupted Ji Tianqing's thoughts. He immediately stopped and raised his eyebrows as he looked at the night sky in front of him. Thousands of meters away in the night sky, there was a woman in a golden dress who was indescribably beautiful. The woman was tall and beautiful. Her temperament was noble and coquettish and she was full of a captivating aura. She stood in the night sky gracefully and the phoenix crown on her head shone brightly. The long golden dress hung behind her and swayed gently in the night wind, making her look ethereal. Unfortunately, she looked at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile and her words were sarcastic. Ji Tianqing took a look at her and frowned. A look of astonishment flashed across his eyes. This woman. Why does she look so familiar? Her spiritual soul aura is also familiar. Is she from the Cha Nu tribe? Martial Sage realm? Could it be her? These thoughts flashed across Ji Tianqing's mind. In just a breath, he recognized the woman. She was the leader of the Cha Nu tribe, Empress Tan Tai. However, even though Ji Tianqing's heart wavered, he remained calm on the surface and did not reveal any abnormalities. He looked at Empress Tan Tai indifferently and said coldly, "Who are you? Why are you blocking my way?" Empress Tan Tai looked at him meaningfully for a moment, then pretended to be charming and said with a smile, "This empress is a citizen of the Scarlet Sun Empire. I wanted to welcome Marshal Ji's triumphant return." Who would have thought that Grand Marshal Ji would be so severely injured and end up in such a sorry state? He even abandoned hundreds of thousands of soldiers and fled back alone. It's really hard to believe that the invincible Marshal Ji actually has a time when he has to flee. Empress Tan Tai pretended to be sorry, but her expression and tone were full of undisguised complacency and ridicule. Ji Tianqing was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to answer. He lowered his head and looked at himself. Only then did he come to a realization. It turned out that during the previous battle, his white robe was stained with blood and had long turned purplish black. He looked rather miserable. "I see," he said in his heart, basically guessing the purpose of Empress Tan Tai's visit. But he did not explain. He looked at Empress Tantai calmly and asked indifferently, "So, you deliberately waited for me here to laugh at me, or to kill me?" Empress Tantai pretended to be stunned for a moment, looked at him with puzzlement, and asked affectionately, "Why would Grand Marshal Ji think of this Empress as that kind of person? This Empress can't wait to love you, how can I kill you?" Hearing the words "love you," Ji Tianqing instinctively felt disgusted and frowned with a cold face. "Please conduct yourself with dignity, Ben Shuai, and you don't know each other." "Ah!" Empress Tantai exclaimed in surprise and asked incredulously, "Grand Marshal Ji, do you really not remember this Empress? 1,000 years ago, this Empress was your most beloved woman. At that time, you held this Empress in the palm of your hand and cared for me in every way possible. You couldn't wait to hold this Empress in your mouth." Empress Tantai held her chest with both hands, with a look of heartache. Her clear eyes were full of mist, and she looked like she was about to cry. Ji Tianqing frowned and almost couldn't help but curse her for being shameless. However, he guessed Empress Tantai's intention and could only remain calm and restrained. He shook his head expressionlessly and said, "You've got the wrong person, Ben Shuai is not yet 30 years old. For a woman like you who has lived for more than 1,000 years, Ben Shuai can't have emotional entanglements with you. Ben Shuai's taste is not that heavy." Empress Tantai was humiliated by him, but she was not angry. Instead, she felt even more wronged. 2 lines of crystal-clear tears burst out of her eyes and rolled down her white cheeks. "Kenshin! You heartless man, did you really lose your memory and forget about this Empress? You once said that this Empress is your heart, your eyes, your most beloved Xiao Tian Tian. We once swore to the sun and the moon that we would be together for all eternity." Empress Tantai's expression and tone were very real, as if she was really heartbroken and hurt by love. Ji Tianqing had goosebumps all over his body. Unable to bear it, he shouted angrily with a black face, "Enough! Shut the hell up! Tantai Xian, This seat will say it for the last time, whether it is the previous life, this life or the next life, this seat will not have any feelings for you. You can be shameless and have no bottom line, but this seat disdains to be associated with you, lest you tarnish this seat's reputation." Suddenly hearing this sentence, the tears on Empress Tantai's face dried up in an instant, and the sadness disappeared in an instant. She pointed her finger at Ji Tianqing and laughed out loud in an unrestrained manner. "Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Didn't you pretend not to know this Empress? Finally can't pretend anymore? Kenshin, Kenshin! You didn't expect it, did you? After 1,000 years, you and I actually meet again." Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "But when we meet again, you still haven't changed. You are still as unrestrained and disgusting as before." Empress Tantai's laughter gradually stopped, and her face gradually turned cold. She stared at Ji Tianqing with resentment. She walked slowly towards Ji Tianqing and said in a cold voice, "Kenshin. This Empress has deep feelings for you, and has been infatuated with you for hundreds of years. In order to be with you, this Empress was not even afraid of being ridiculed by the world and took the initiative to send herself into your arms. But you? How did you treat this Empress back then? And how you humiliated this consort in front of everyone, could it be that you've forgotten? How can there be such a heartless and cold-blooded thing like you in this world? Now that you have come back from the dead and have started over, you are still so heartless when you see this Empress again. Even if you have been reborn, do you still have no feelings for this Empress?" Ji Tianqing looked at her with a cold face and said firmly, "Of course not." "Ha ha ha." Empress Tantai sneered with a face full of self-mockery. While walking towards him, she reached out to untie her golden dress. Chapter 21-29. Under the hazy moonlight, the night wind was cold. Empress Tantai's golden dress hung down to her waist, revealing her snow-white and tender shoulders. A thin white gauze wrapped around her chest, but it could not cover the towering peaks. Facing such a tempting scenery, Ji Tianqing was still indifferent. He closed his eyes and said indifferently, "Tantai Xian, you know the answer, why do you want to humiliate yourself?" Empress Tantai came in front of him and stopped 10 steps away from him. The self-deprecating sneer on her face gradually turned into resentment and anger. She glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted coldly, "You don't even dare to look at me? Do you really despise me so much? There are countless men in the world who are obsessed with me, only you are so disdainful of me." Ji Tianqing said calmly, "No matter how beautiful the skin is, it's just a pink skeleton. Only shallow and lecherous men will be fascinated by you. There are countless men in the world, how can they all be infatuated with you? That's just your imagination. What's more, you have lived for thousands of years, and in order to cultivate the enchanted woman technique, you have sucked countless men dry. A pair of jade arms for thousands of men to sleep on, 2 red lips for tens of thousands of men to taste. As long as they are clean men, they will not like you." Empress Tantai stared at Ji Tianqing with wide eyes. After being stunned for a moment, she suddenly burst into laughter. "A pair of jade arms for thousands of men to sleep on. 2 red lips for tens of thousands of men to taste. Ha 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 ha, so that's how it is." This consort finally understood. Was this the reason why you looked down on and humiliated this consort? Then what if I tell you that things are not as you think? I have indeed cultivated the enchanted woman technique and swallowed the essence and power of tens of thousands of men. But the men who have really had sex with me are no more than 10. And they are all famous overlords, all famous martial saints. Ji Tianqing still closed his eyes and said expressionlessly, 10, 100, or 1,000, what's the difference? You don't have to tell me anything because it has nothing to do with me. Tantai Xian, I'll make things clear again tonight. I hope you can respect yourself and not make any more mistakes. He 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 he. Empress Tantai sneered as she put on her golden dress and fastened her collar. What a good, don't make mistakes. Kenshin, you're still the same as before, cold and heartless, as stubborn as a rock. Before tonight, this consort's heart had softened and I had hesitated whether or not I should come and see you. However, this consort is still unwilling to give up. This consort still harbors a trace of hope, thinking that you might change your mind after being reborn. If you still haven't recovered your memories, this consort will wholeheartedly protect you and serve you wholeheartedly. Now, it seems that this consort was overthinking things again. Empress Tantai's tone became colder and colder. Apparently, she had completely given up and no longer had any illusions. Ji Tianqing opened his eyes and looked at her. With a calm expression, he said, "It's good that you can understand. Why bother me again? From now on, we won't have anything to do with each other. Don't appear in front of me. Goodbye." After that, he cupped his hands to Empress Tantai and was about to leave. Empress Tantai sneered, "He he he he. You're really confident and naive. Do you think this consort came to you tonight just to reconnect with you? Impossible. You've hurt this consort too deeply and I've suffered great shame and humiliation. How can I just let it go like this? Back then, this consort wanted to take revenge on you, but your strength was too high and you ascended to the upper realm. Now that you're cultivating from the beginning and your strength is so weak, this is a great opportunity for this consort to take revenge. But don't worry, this consort will never kill you. This consort will let you live well, be this consort's boy toy, kneel at my feet every day, and kiss my toes." As soon as her voice fell, Empress Tantai no longer concealed her intentions. Her palms shot out like lightning, and a pink brilliance shot towards Ji Tianqing. The pink light was the special power of the enchantress art, which had the effect of seducing the soul. Once eroded by the pink light, one would lose their mind and become a puppet under Empress Tantai's control. He he he. I've already expected that you're up to no good. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He sneered contemptuously and shot out a dazzling star fire towards Empress Tantai. Boom! The star light and the pink light collided, and a thunderous sound erupted. The night sky within a few hundred miles was lit up, and the earth trembled violently. The two of them were evenly matched, and neither of them had gained the upper hand. Empress Tantai's face changed immediately. She frowned and said in a low voice, "Damn it. Your strength has recovered so quickly, and you've already surpassed the rank 6 martial sage realm." Ji Tianqing chuckled, "You're wrong. I've just broken through to the martial sage realm tonight. You should have seen the heavenly vision earlier, right? That's impossible." Empress Tantai couldn't believe it, and she shouted in shock, "You've killed 2 demon sages a long time ago, so you must have reached the martial sage realm long ago. Moreover, you've just broken through to the martial sage realm, so how can you have such strength?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Don't forget who I am. Nothing is impossible for me." Empress Tantai's body trembled, and she came to her senses, muttering to herself, "Yes. How could I forget that you're the famous Kenshin, the immortal king of the galaxy? However, it's too early for you to be proud. I was just testing you, and I haven't even used 70% of my strength. I've said that I'll make you my pet tonight, and you'll never escape." After saying that, Empress Tantai made a series of hand seals and quickly formed a mysterious seal. Heavenly Star Rain, Enchantress seduces the soul. Following her cold shout, the night sky around Ji Tianqing immediately lit up with a pink light that soared into the sky. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the pink light formed a light shield that covered a radius of 300 miles, covering the entire area. Around Ji Tianqing, 4 women appeared out of thin air. They were about 100 feet tall, and they were wearing short skirts. These women all looked 70% like Empress Tantai. Their appearances were full of exotic charm. Their clear eyes were captivating, and they exuded an intoxicating charm. The 4 women were slim, and they were as plump as peaches. They were so tender that it seemed like water would come out of them. They were only wearing a chest wrap and a very short skirt that was made of translucent white gauze. From time to time, some seductive scenes could be seen, which made one's imagination run wild. This huge pink light shield was Empress Tantai's unique skill, the Ecstasy Realm. Inside it, one's spiritual soul would be invaded at any time, and one would not be able to concentrate. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.